Order, please. We'll now begin with the daily routine, beginning with presenting and reading of petitions. The Honourable Member for Inverness.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to table a petition on behalf of residents. The operative clause calling upon the provincial government to install a set of traffic lights at the intersection in Waikagama that connects Main Street, Trans-Canada Highway 105 and Route 252 in Waikagama. The petition has 592 names, and I have added my signature as per the rules of the House.
Petition is tabled. The Honourable Member for Clare Digby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to table two petitions from the member for Eastern Shore. The operable clause being repave Conrad Settlement Road. We, the undersigned, petition the province of Nova Scotia to have the Conrad Settlement Road repaved. And there are three compelling reasons signed after that. And I see that the member from Eastern Shore has affixed his signature to that. Also, the second petition is we, the undersigned property owners with parcels of land with road frontage and or access from Lorien Drive and Porters Lake, HRM, Nova Scotia, hereby petition the Halifax Regional Municipality and the province of Nova Scotia for consideration of capital upgrading and improvement to our roadway from gravel substandard to paved standard with the undersigned. With the understanding this will be cost shared on a 50-50% basis in accordance to the Nova Scotia Aid to Municipal Program for paving subdivision streets. And the member from Eastern Shore's signature is affixed to that also. And I will affix my signature to that also if you wish. Thank you.
We'll now move on to presenting reports of committees. The Honourable Chair of Law Amendments.
Mr. Speaker, as Chair of the Committee on Law Amendments, I'm directed to report that the committee has met and considered the following bill. Bill number 59, an act respecting accessibility in Nova Scotia. The committee recommends this bill to the favourable consideration of the House with amendments.
Ordered that this bill be referred to the Committee of the Whole House on Bills. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could I ask you to request of the House unanimous consent so that Bill 59 can be added to the order paper today and considered for a Committee of the Whole debate today?
Is it agreed? Agreed. It is agreed. The Honourable Member for Kings South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Excuse me. I'd like to ask all members of the House to direct themselves to the East Gallery, where we're joined today by a group of students from Horton High School. Their teacher, Brad Richards, has once again brought his political science class here to the House to observe proceedings in this hallowed hall. And I'd like all of the members of the House to join me in welcoming the grade 12 students from Horton High School political science class.
The Honourable Member for Fairview Clayton Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Standing Committee on Community Services, I am pleased to submit the annual report of the committee for the period from September 2015 to June 2016 of the 62nd General Assembly.
The report is tabled. The Honourable Member for Inverness.
Mr. Speaker, as Chair of the Public Accounts Committee, I beg leave to table the 2015 annual report of the Public Accounts Committee.
The report is tabled. The Honourable Member for Lunenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As Chair of the Resource Committee, I beg leave to submit the annual report for 2016.
The report is tabled. The Honourable Member for Sydney Whitney Pier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Chair of the Standing Committee on Veteran Affairs, I beg leave to table the annual report for 2016.
The report is tabled. We'll now move on to tabling reports, regulations, and other papers. The Honourable Member for Halifax Citadel, Sable Island.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to table a report entitled Procurement Shared Services Health Check Analysis 2016-2017.
The report is tabled. As Speaker of the House of Assembly and pursuant to Section 163 of the Elections Act, I'm pleased to table the report of the Chief Electoral Officer on the proceedings of the Halifax Needham by-election held August 30th, 2016, Volume 2, Statement of Financial Information and Statistics. The report is tabled. Oh, I apologize. I thought they were duplicates. As Speaker of the House of Assembly, I'm pleased to table the House of Assembly Management Commission Annual Report for the calendar year 2016. The report was prepared by the House of Assembly Management Commission pursuant to Clause 11, Bracket 1, Bracket F of the House of Assembly Management Commission Act. The report is tabled. We'll now move on to statements by ministers. We'll now move on to government notices of motion. The Honourable Minister of Communities, Culture and Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas April 23rd to the 29th is National Volunteer Week, a time to celebrate the selfless contributions of many acts of generosity that Nova Scotians carry out each and every day. Whereas last week we honored 65 award recipients who dedicated their passion and show their passion and dedication to Nova Scotians as volunteers at the Provincial Volunteer Awards ceremony. And whereas it is encouraging to know that in this province we are surrounded by people who generously give their time, help strengthen our communities and enrich the lives of so many. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of the House of Assembly will join Nova Scotians in showing sincere appreciation to the countless people who contribute to their communities each day, and take the time this week to thank a volunteer who is making a difference in your community. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? It is agreed. Would all those in favor of the motion please say aye. Contrary minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of the Public Service Commission and Internal Services.
Mr. Speaker, before I read my resolution, I beg leave to make an introduction.
Permission granted.
Mr. Speaker, joining us in the Speaker's Gallery today is a delegation from the United Arab Emirates, Ministry of Interior. Assalamu alaikum, which means peace be with you to our guests. The delegation is visiting this week for meetings and discussions with officials from the Department of Internal Services about our achievements with our shared services model. Mr. Speaker, the delegation has done the research throughout the world and has found Nova Scotia to be a leader in implementing shared services. I would like to, for the warm welcome of the House, I would like to introduce Major Hamdam Al-Yamimi, Major Abdul Rahman Al-Tamimi, Major Ahmed Al-Shihi, First Lieutenant Saeed Al-Junabi, and Madame Rafaya Bush Anin. I ask them to stand and receive the warm welcome of the House. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move for the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas significant steps have been taken to centralize delivery of corporate functions like procurement, financial services, information technology, telecommunications, construction project management for Nova Scotia's public sector under the provincial government, and whereas a recent review of the Shared Services Procurement Initiative found that it has resulted in improved delivery of vital support services to the public sector and saved more than $50 million, and whereas the Department of Internal Services continues to look at ways to work more effectively across the public sector to provide better, more efficient services to Nova Scotians. Therefore, be it resolved, all members of the House of Assembly acknowledge the work of the public servants in delivering shared services success by realizing savings and improving services delivery to Nova Scotians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There's been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? It is agreed. Would all those in favor of the motion please say aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. The motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall, 1, read and table a message from His Honour the Lieutenant Governor transmitting the estimates of sums required for the service of the province for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2018 for the consideration of this House. 2, table the estimate books. 3, table the government business plan. 4, table the Crown Corporation business plans. 5, table the estimate and Crown Corporation business plans resolutions. 6, deliver my budget speech. And 7, move that the estimates of sums required for the service of the province for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2018, being supplied to be granted to Her Majesty and the Crown Corporation business plans be referred to the Committee of the Whole House on supply. Mr. Speaker, for the benefit of the information of the House, the budget will be presented on April 27th, 2017.
We'll now move on to introduction of bills. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 1 of the Acts of 2017, the Teachers' Professional Agreement and Classroom Improvements 2017 Act, otherwise known as the Bill to Repeal Bill 75.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 1 of the Acts of 2017, the Teachers' Professional Agreement and Classroom Improvement 2017 Act.
Bill number 79, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 1 of the Acts of 2017, the Teachers' Professional Agreement and Classroom Improvements 2017 Act.
Ordered that the bill be read a second time on a future day. The Honourable Member for Truro, Bible Hill, Millbrook, Salmon River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Repeal Chapter 1 of the Acts of 2017, the Teachers' Professional Agreement and Classroom Improvements 2017 Act. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Truro, Bible Hill, Millbrook, Salmon River begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Repeal Chapter 1 of the Acts of 2017, the Teachers' Professional Agreement and Classroom Improvements 2017 Act.
Bill number 80, entitled An Act to Repeal Chapter 1 of the Acts of 2017, the Teachers' Professional Agreement and Classroom Improvements 2017 Act.
Ordered that the bill be read a second time on a future day. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled... Actually, Mr. Speaker, before I do this, may I make an introduction?
Permission granted.
Thank you. In the gallery today, we have two very special young women, Chrissy Merrigan and Amanda Dodsworth, who are the organizers of a rally here in our capital city of Halifax a few months ago against sexual violence and in favor of stronger laws for survivors of sexual violence, Mr. Speaker. So I want to invite all members of the House to welcome both of these young ladies to the House today and thank them for the work that they've done. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 238 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Provincial Court Act, respecting sexual assault law education for judges.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 238 of the Revised Statutes 1989 of the Provincial Court Act respecting sexual assault law and law education for judges.
Bill number 81, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 238 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Provincial Court Act respecting sexual assault law education for judges.
Ordered that the bill be read a second time on a future day. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2010, the Finance Act, respecting intergenerational reporting.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2010, the Finance Act, respecting intergenerational reporting.
Bill number 82, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2010, the Finance Act, respecting intergenerational reporting.
Ordered that the bill be read a second time on a future day. The Honourable House Leader for the Official Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 32 of the Acts of 2014, the Health Authorities Act.
The Honourable House Leader for the Official Opposition begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 32 of the Acts of 2014, the Health Authorities Act.
Bill number 83, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 32 of the Acts of 2014, the Health Authorities Act.
Ordered that the bill be read a second time on a future day. Now move on to notices of motion. Statements by members. Oh, pardon me. We'll go back to notices of motion. The Honourable Leader in the House for the New Democratic Party.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Statistics Canada estimated that there are as many as 106,000 Nova Scotians without a family doctor, and whereas the 19th of October 2016, the member from Clare Digby admitted that under this government's current plan, the Liberals will not be able to provide a doctor for every Nova Scotian up to 10 years from now. And whereas the Liberal government keeps trying to convince Nova Scotians that they have the mental and physical well-being of citizens at heart, therefore be it resolved that the Liberal government inform the members of this House why they cannot make good on their promise that they made to the people of this province in 2013. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice.
There's been a request for waivers. Is it agreed? I hear several noes. Motion is tabled. The Honourable Member for Queens Shelburne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas for the past 2 years this government has cut operation fundings to nursing homes and long-term care facilities, resulting in a direct impact on the quality of care and the quality of life for seniors and other residents. Whereas long-term care administrators have experienced reductions of funding even greater than the 1% required by the department. And whereas our seniors deserve a high quality of living and care, healthy food, and recreational opportunities and adequate staffing. Therefore, be it resolved that the House call for the $8.2 million in operation funding cut by this government from long-term care to be restored immediately to ensure our seniors receive the best positive quality of life and care. Mr. Speaker, request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There's been a request for waivers. Is it agreed? No. I hear several noes. Motion is tabled. We'll now move on to statements by members. The Honourable Member for Argyle-Barrington.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are so concerned with winning an upcoming election, they don't care if they trample on the charter rights of the people of Nova Scotia. Our Court of Appeal ruled that the process that drew up the 2012 boundaries were unconstitutional. Our Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees that Canadians have the right to effective representation. The rights of the Acadian and African Nova Scotians have been violated, and Liberals have done nothing to help them. The Liberals have had plenty of time to ask the court to rule on the constitutionality of the ridings. However, they drag their heels at the cost of minority rights. Mr. Speaker, what are the Liberals afraid of, and why won't they guarantee effective representation for all citizens?
The Honourable Member for Queens Shelburne.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, this Liberal government has refused to address the electoral boundaries issues, suggesting boundaries will be addressed at a later date. Yet, Mr. Speaker, the southwest region of Nova Scotia today has
Order, please. The Honourable Member for Queens Shelburne has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yet, Mr. Speaker, the southwest
Order,
region...
please. The Honourable Member for Queens Shelburne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal government has refused to address the electoral boundaries issues, suggesting boundaries will be addressed at a later date. Yet, Mr. Speaker, southwest region of Nova Scotia today has 2 less Acadian ridings, and Shelburne County has been split in half since 2013. Mr. Speaker, this government has a mandate until October 2018 to engage the Electoral Commission. However, this government is more interested in a lust for power. Mr. Speaker, in 2012, today's member for Annapolis, today's Premier, spoke of protecting Acadian rights. Yet today, April 2017, he had an opportunity to do just that. Yet he is clearly not protecting Acadian rights by not engaging the Electoral Boundaries Commission. It is never wrong, it is never the wrong time to do the right thing. Mr. Speaker, justice delayed is justice denied.
The Honourable Member for Yarmouth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the province recently presented its annual volunteer awards, and Rochelle D'Entremont was named the 2017 Volunteer of the Year for the town of Yarmouth. Rochelle is a founding member and advocate of 100+ women of Yarmouth County who care. She has helped with the Yarmouth Central School Breakfast Program and is a member of the Yarmouth Rotary Club, where her involvement has included Meals on Wheels, among other initiatives. She also has served on the Business Awards Committee for the Yarmouth and Area Chamber of Commerce and has been an in-school mentor through Big Brothers and Big Sisters. Rochelle gives selflessly of her time and energy and is a shining example to those in our community. The town of Yarmouth is proud of Rochelle D'Entremont and her continuous volunteer efforts, and I'm proud to recognize her here in this House today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Cumberland South.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate Chelsea Atkinson on opening Canadian country music star Brett Kissel's show in Liverpool this January. Chelsea is a 16-year-old country music star from Spring Hill. She began singing at the age of 8 and started playing the guitar at 13. Mr. Speaker, Chelsea won the contest to open Brett Kissel's show by submitting a video of her playing Kissel's song, "I Didn't Fall in Love with Your Hair." Can assure you, Mr. Speaker, no one has ever sung that song to me. Having said that, this gave Chelsea the opportunity to perform 20 minutes of her original material in front of a large Liverpool audience. I'm happy to congratulate Chelsea on this remarkable accomplishment, and I wish her continued success in her music career. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Needham.
Mr. Speaker, the Government of Nova Scotia has committed to help residents of this province be healthier and move more. Through Thrive and the Sustainable Transportation Strategy, the Government has committed to walkable and bikeable communities and better transit. To quote the website of the Sustainable Transportation Strategy, driving is increasingly expensive. Physical fitness has suffered as people drive more. Some people cannot own or drive a car. To meet our provincial greenhouse gas reduction targets, we need to tackle transportation emissions. And yet, this government has decided to purchase land in Bayers Lake for a major outpatient health centre, where procedures will be performed, after which, in some cases, the patient will not be allowed to drive. Leadership involves fixing our sights on the future we want, and then with every decision, moving ourselves towards that future. By contradicting the government's own efforts to promote health and sustainability, the Liberals have failed to lead.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I love it when new businesses choose Dartmouth North to house their business, especially when it brings an affordable alternative to home cooking to our community. Oven Ready opened its doors at 31 Albro Lake Road in early January. They offer a unique spin on takeout. They cook and prepare meals consisting of chili, turkey, and chicken pot pies with all the fixings. The meals are frozen and ready to be taken home. Once frozen, the food only takes around 45 minutes, an hour to heat. Oven Ready also offers baked goods daily at a very affordable cost. This business is owned and operated by Trish McDonald and her sons Josh, Alex, and Greg, who work tirelessly to prepare these delicious dishes. Mr. Speaker, I ask members of this House to join me in welcoming Oven Ready to Dartmouth North, and I look forward to their continued success.
The honourable member for Pictou Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are here in the House today on the cusp of an election that this government seems intent on calling for all the wrong reasons. As we know, the Nova Scotia Court of Appeal ruled that the boundaries process of 2012 was unconstitutional. The member from Annapolis agreed with that in 2012. As Premier in 2017, he won't let that detail get in the way of manipulating the province's Acadian communities for political gain. Mr. Speaker, this is only the latest reckless demonstration of power politics by the Premier and his government. His only vision for this province is one in which constitutional inconveniences in working families make way for his backroom priorities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Queens Shelburne.
Mr. Speaker, as we grow nearer to a next provincial election, we are all reminded of the Liberals' platform promised a doctor for every Nova Scotian. Just this last session, the Liberal member from Clare Digby tried unsuccessfully to change the goalposts to a doctor for every community to the next 10 years. Mr. Speaker, the spin doctors at one government place will need to come up with a new slogan for the Liberal health platform in the next election. Based on the Liberals' track record over the last 3 years, Mr. Speaker, perhaps just 3 words will do. And those 3 words, Mr. Speaker, don't get sick. Thank you.
The honourable member for Bedford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to tell you about a constituent.
Order, please. Order, please. The honourable member for Bedford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to tell you about a constituent of mine who gives back to our community. Eric Wagner is a chartered accountant. Every year for the last 13 years, he's run a free tax preparation clinic for those on low incomes who need assistance preparing their taxes. Mr. Wagner says he and his wife have lived a fortunate life and he wanted to give something back. Back when he started his practice in 2003, he received many inquiries from widows, retirees, and people on fixed incomes, but he didn't feel he could charge them for tax preparation, so the idea grew from there. Mr. Wagner limits his free tax prep service to people with low incomes, but there's no magic cutoff number. He listens to people's stories and decides from there. He has a lot of regulars. The tax clinic runs for 2 Saturdays with 5 meeting slots per day. If the clinic fills up, he always makes arrangements to meet with his clients another time, and some of his clients have mobility issues, so he goes to their homes. I'd like to thank Mr. Wagner for helping those in our community who could benefit from his expertise at one of our least favorite times of the year. Well done.
The honourable member for Colchester, Musquodoboit Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, between November the 15th, 1944, March 10th, 1945, during the Second World War, Royal Canadian Air Force Warrant Officer Roy Morrison participated in 17 daytime, 13 night missions in a Lancaster bomber over Germany. The harrowing experiences from his seat in the Lancaster's glassed-in bubble at the rear of the plane are forever etched into the former Avro Lancaster tail gunner's memories. Recently, the 93-year-old Truro Heights resident was honored with an induction into the Lancaster Living Legends Project at the 14-wing Greenwood Aviation Museum. I would like to extend congratulations to Roy Morrison on his induction into the Lancaster Living Legends Project. Thank him for his brave service to our country 72 years ago. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Truro, Bible Hill, Millbrook, Salmon River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to commend the collaborative work of Enrich and the Ecology Action Centre that was presented last week as we approached Earth Day. Their proposal of an environmental Bill of Rights, which would ensure all Nova Scotians have protection from environmental destruction and have access to clean air, earth, and water, is very much in keeping with our caucus's position on this matter. Our caucus has introduced 2 bills in the past, Bill number 7, an Environmental Bill of Rights, and Bill 111, an Act to Address Environmental Racism. While we've seen little action from this government on environmental issues, I find it reassuring to know that groups like the EAC and Enrich are continuing to stand up and bring these matters to the forefront. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank these organizations again for their work and say that I stand with them in their fight for environmental justice. Thank you.
The honourable member for Colchester North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 2 farmers who are credited with helping to build the agriculture sector in Nova Scotia were honoured in March of 2017 by having 2 refurbished buildings now serving as Department of Agriculture offices renamed for them. The Annapolis building has been renamed the Roger Stewart Bacon Building in honour of Upper Nepean dairy farmer and pioneer of the blueberry industry, Roger Stewart Bacon. He was elected as a Progressive Conservative MLA in 1970, appointed Minister of Tourism in 1978, Minister of Agriculture from 79 to 88, Deputy Premier and Minister of Housing until 1990, and then served as interim leader of the PC Party as the province's 21st Premier for 6 months in 1990. The Northumberland building has been renamed as the Edward F. Lorraine Building in honour of the late Ed Lorraine, a beef farmer from Upper Onslow who served in numerous political roles, member of the County Council, County Warden, Colchester North MLA from 1981 to 84 and 88 to 99, and Minister of Agriculture from 1997 to 99. In 2004, he was named to the Atlantic Agricultural Hall of Fame. 3 of Ed's 5 children and his wife Shirley were there, as well as Roger Bacon's son Dougie. All proudly attended the ceremony to show support and appreciation for the accomplishments and recognition of their fathers.
The honourable member for Pictou East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with signs of spring popping up around us, our thoughts drift to summer holidays and ways to entertain our children. These same thoughts have been in the minds of the Westville Rotary Club as they have pledged to build a splash park in Westville's Acadia Park. Fundraising is currently underway, and as the weather improves and the calendar flips forward, excitement around this project is growing. I'm impressed that this small club has taken on this large initiative to bring a new and exciting venue to Westville, and I know it will be a welcome and well-used facility. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to extend a huge thank you to President Dave Dignan and his fellow Rotarians who truly do put service above self. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Chester St. Margaret's.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and excuse my voice. Mr. Speaker, Nova Scotians have learned the hard way that there is a major difference between campaigning Liberals and governing Liberals. Do you remember that time in 2013 when these Liberals across the aisle said that they would build a collaborative emergency centre in Lunenburg? Well, Mr. Speaker, I can promise you the people of Lunenburg and surrounding areas do. And while money seems to be raining from the sky recently, there has still been no mention of the Liberals fulfilling this campaign promise. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to health care in this province, the Liberals have no plan, only promises. And with an election around the corner, Nova Scotians can expect many more hollow Liberal promises on the campaign trail. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Clayton Park West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to rise today to congratulate Madeleine Ann Jewell on her stellar academic achievements and her record of selflessness and dedication towards her community. She's a dedicated volunteer at Our Lady of Lebanon Church and a proud instructor of Lebanese folk dance at Demand Association of Canada. Her dedication to her studies was recognized by her receiving the prestigious Lebanese Chamber of Commerce Scholarship and entrance into the Commerce program at St. Mary's University in Halifax in the fall of 2016. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask you to join me in congratulating Madeleine Ann Jewell for her academic excellence and community involvement and wish her every success in her future endeavours.
The honourable member for Kings North.
Mr. Speaker, as elected members, we are entrusted with the responsibility of treating taxpayer money with respect. That means doing our homework and making sure taxpayers are getting real value for their money. Rushing a process for political advantage is an abuse of taxpayers' money. An open and transparent process like a tender ensures taxpayers' dollars are not abused. Mr. Speaker, this government must explain to Nova Scotians how paying $7.5 million for 15 acres, 12 times the assessed value, provides value for taxpayers. This government must clearly demonstrate how their untendered deal gives the people of Nova Scotia the best bang for their buck. Thank you.
The honourable member for Truro, Bible Hill, Millbrook, Salmon River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've been inundated with days in Nova Scotia where our democracy seems to be under attack. Imposed contracts, voices drowned out in government committees. But most recently, we saw it on April the 13th when, 14 months after its workers went on strike, the Chronicle Herald purchased all transcontinental news outlets in the Atlantic provinces while continuing to deny its workers fairness. It's never a good sign, Mr. Speaker, when one outlet owns all publications, especially when said outlet has the labor record of the Chronicle Herald. Yet, in the face of this, we've seen extraordinary resilience from striking Nova Scotian journalists who have continued to contribute to the media cycle with their acclaimed online publication, The Local Express. We in the NDP will keep standing with our striking journalists who continue to offer valuable, intelligent, and fresh perspectives to all Nova Scotians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The 14th annual Waverley Fall River Beaverbank Volunteer Awards were held in April at the Waverley Legion. I'm very happy to be a member of that organizing committee, having joined in 2008. 23 volunteers from groups, clubs, and non-profit organizations have been recognized for the volunteer efforts in their community. To date, over 300 community volunteers have been recognized. This night is dedicated to founding member and veteran Crawford Reed, who passed away this March 23rd. This dedication and contributions to the committee were recognized. Thanks to the committee for organizing this event once again, and thanks you to each and every volunteer. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Pictou West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this spring, we as legislators have an opportunity to put partisan politics aside and do the right thing. We have a chance to dedicate our work here to protecting survivors of sexual violence. We have an opportunity and an obligation to lead the charge and create meaningful change to make our province a leader in protecting survivors and sending a message to offenders. Mr. Speaker, a court decision in March sparked public anger and frustration. Now is the time to harness that energy and continue to put public conversation first. Now, Mr. Speaker, is the time to put survivors first. Thank you.
The honourable member for Halifax Needham.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate a long-time resident of Halifax Needham, actor Gordon Patrick White. Gordon is Mi'kmaq from the west coast of Newfoundland, and I've known him for more than 20 years. I've seen him in shows at Grenfell College, the Stephenville Festival, the Khyber Centre for the Arts, and Alderney Landing. I've also seen him between shows, during long stretches when he's had little income, often washing dishes at restaurants, while waiting for the next chance to do his life's work. A couple months ago, Gordon moved to Stratford, Ontario, where he has joined a rather famous theatre company. Knowing Gordon has helped me to always be aware of the struggle of artists, to be curious about the backstories of people working in the service industry, to be motivated to show up to little shows, and to thank artists for their work. I am thrilled that this summer he is at the Stratford Theatre Company and congratulate him on his success.
The honourable member for Timberley Prospect.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to recognize the hard work of senior management and staff at the Nova Scotia Health Authority for choosing an evidence-based decision to locate an outpatient centre in Bayers Lake Park, in the centre of the cross-sections of Highways 102 and 103, minutes from the newly built Lacewood Terminal and surrounded by the fastest-growing communities east of Montreal. The taxpayers of Timberley Prospect and other communities deserve comparable health services close to home. Commuters from the busy highways, including the 101, 102, 103.
Order, please. Order, please. The honourable member for Timberley Prospect.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No longer will commuters coming off the Highway 101, 102, 103 will have to be stuck in traffic past exit 0 or struggle to find parking downtown. The NDP state firmly that this centre should be in Sackville and try to pin communities against each other and use this zero-sum game. This Liberal government and this member stands by the people in Timberley Prospect and the fastest growing communities in Atlantic Canada. Thank you.
The honourable member for Sydney River, Myra Lewisburg.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, one of the lessons we're taught in school is that ignoring our problems doesn't make them go away. We can pretend they're not there, but they only get worse. Soon, tiny problems swell into massive problems, and in time, they become almost impossible to resolve. We know that we need to deal with issues head on. This is the one lesson I fear that this government has not yet taken to heart. After the Court of Appeal ruled that the previous government's intervention in the boundaries process was unconstitutional, this government had a golden opportunity to make it right. But for crass political reasons and despite multiple chances, they've kicked the can well down the road. They're faced with a clear plan of action, and yet they decide to defer and arrogantly insist that they know what is best. Mr. Speaker, what will it take for this government to learn this lesson? Soon enough, they will own this problem outright. By then, the responsibility will fall on all Nova Scotians to fix their mistakes.
The honourable member for Chester St. Margaret's.
Mr. Speaker, it has been difficult to watch this Liberal government acting as if the recent dollars being thrown at the film industry has erased the devastation caused by the Liberal decision to axe the film tax credit just a few short years ago. Since that time, trained film people and their families have left this province. Businesses that once thrived supporting the film industry have closed shop. Mr. Speaker, with one swoop of a pen, this Liberal government wrecked an industry that had been built up for over 30 years. Now this government wants us to believe it's all sunshine and rainbows. Must be an election in the air, Mr. Speaker. I want to express my support for the industry and acknowledge their determination in rebounding from the devastation caused by this short-sighted Liberal government. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Halifax, Chebucto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to welcome a vibrant new business, Seven Peppers Grill, to Quimple Road and to Halifax, Chebucto. They opened their doors in their new location just a few months ago and have been a welcome addition to the food scene on Quimple Road. Formerly known as Aleppo Cafe and the Brewery Market, Seven Peppers Grill is run by husband and wife team Abul Rahman Jadi and Hekmat Ani, who arrived in Canada from Syria in 2006. Seven Pepper Grill serves flavorful Mediterranean meals with lots of options from the grill. The name Seven Peppers is derived from the 7 spices commonly used in Syrian cooking. Mr. Speaker, Abrahman and Hekmat are hard-working entrepreneurs and are great examples of the possibilities that immigrants bring to our city and to province. I invite my colleagues to join me in giving them a warm welcome to Quimple Road and wishing them all the best of the success in the future. Thank you.
The honourable member for Inverness.
Speaker, congratulations to the Cape Breton West Islanders Midget AAA team.
who recently won a provincial championship and have since been crowned Atlantic Canadian champions. Yesterday, this team won their first game at the National Championships in Prince George, BC, beating the Quebec champion 2-1. Long Point was proud of their hometown son when Malcolm McEachran scored the opener, followed by Jacob Stewart of Antigonish scoring the winner. And Mr. Speaker, if I can borrow a phrase from the late, great Danny Gallivan, Colton Ellis of River Dennis made scintillating saves throughout the remainder of the second and third periods to preserve the win. Every player on this team is a star. All have played their roles during this successful season. May we here in this legislature wish our Atlantic Canadian representatives well in today's game against the Pacific Region champion, Leduc Oil Kings.
The honourable member for Hants East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Sharenda Michael of Sabaganagati First Nations and Hants East is part of the Canada's delegation to United Nations 61st Congress on the Status of Women in New York. Sharenda and Michaela Julian presented a workshop on March 15th on Indigenous girls leadership. It featured the story of Nova Scotia's Peak Cap Project, which is a Mi'kmaq approach to the United Nations Girls Roundtable model. The Peak Cap Project provided Sharenda and Michaela with the opportunity to find their voices, share their ideas, and embrace Mi'kmaq culture. They also created a YouTube video. Mr. Speaker, I would like to congratulate Sharenda Michael for her participation in the Peak Cap Project and being chosen as part of Canada's delegation to the United Nations 61st Congress on the Status of Women. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Northside Westmount.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, fair and legitimate elections are the cornerstone of our democratic system. Unfortunately, a ruling by Nova Scotia's Court of Appeal put the legitimacy of the province's electoral boundaries into question. Instead of going back to the courts to give the voters certainty the next election we fought on fair and legitimate boundaries, the Premier has chosen to act in a way that he believes is best for him and his party. The Premier used to believe the protection of minority rights should never be compromised, and the process that eliminated protected constituencies made our province poorer. When faced with the choice of strengthening our province or giving the Liberal Party an advantage, the Premier chose his party. This cynical act ensures the Premier's legacy will be a series of expensive constitutional quandaries that will last for years.
The honourable member for Guysborough Eastern Shore Tracadie.
Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize two long-term residents of East Quaddy, Gary and Shirley Scrivens. Gary and Shirley have been volunteering on the Eastern Shore for nearly 40 years, starting in 1980 with the Cubs, Boy Scouts, Brownies, and Girl Guides. Gary also helped with the formation of the Samuel R. Balcom Recreation Centre. They were also instrumental in starting the local Army Cadet Corps 2610, with Gary becoming the commanding officer and Shirley the supply officer. They have both volunteered with the cadets for over 30 years and have spent countless hours teaching the cadets' shooting team. This dedication has earned the Cadet Corps the honour of the best Army Cadet Corps in Nova Scotia several times in a row. This extraordinary couple dedicate their time to the local Royal Canadian Legion, Courcelette Branch number 58, and Gary has been a member for over 37 years. Mr. Speaker, in honour of National Volunteer Week, I want to thank Gary and Shirley for dedicating their time and energy to making Nova Scotia an even better place to live. Thank you.
The honourable member for Argyle-Barrington.
Mr. Speaker, the 43rd Annual Provincial Volunteer Award ceremony was held in Halifax on Tuesday, April 18th. 11 recipients from various municipal units or towns in towns and in Argyle-Barrington were honoured. The Argyle Municipality Provincial Volunteer of the Year Award was presented to Jill Surratt of Argyle for all her work organizing and fundraising for the Abuptic Festival. She also works with the school breakfast program, coaches, and is also involved in her church community. I congratulate all the recipients in receiving these awards. Their hard work and dedication is very important in their respective communities. I want to thank all the volunteers. We just couldn't do it without you.
The honourable member for Northside Westmount on an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I could take the opportunity on the gallery opposite to introduce my beautiful daughter, who's home from the Caribbean, who's down in the Caribbean studying medicine. She's home for a couple of weeks, and she decided to take this week to come up and take in the activities of the legislature and see how everything's doing in here and make sure that everything runs smooth and keeps on track.
The honourable member for Halifax Armdale.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate the winners of this year's Dalhousie Impact Awards. In March, an immensely talented group of students, societies and professors were honoured for their achievements, and I was proud to witness the recognition of my son Antonios as the recipient of the Faculty Leadership Award in Medicine. Antonios was honoured for his work with various student associations, his many research presentations in neuroscience, his membership in the Brain Repair Centre, and the Atlantic Mobility Action Project research groups, and his role in supporting public brain fairs and the Discovery Centre's Brain War event. As a mother, I am very proud of him. Though the list of worthy winners would be too long to recite here, I also want to give special mention to Salman Sajid, recognized with the Board of Governors Award for his humanitarian involvement in work with international students, Hasmeet Singh Shandok, founder of the Maritime Bengra Group, for being named International Student of the Year, and the Dalhousie Golden Key Society, of which I am an honorary member, for winning Most Impactful Charitable Society. Please join me in congratulating all this year's winners.
The honourable member for Pictou Centre.
Mr. Speaker, the efforts of one person can truly make a difference in their community. Volunteering has many positive benefits, both for the volunteer and for the community. Kim Livingston was selected as New Glasgow's Volunteer of the Year. Kim has volunteered her time and talents to many organizations in her community, including Girl Guides, the Westside Community Centre, Race on the River, Special Olympics, Johnny Miles Marathon, Highland Community Residential Services, VON of Pictou County Kennel Club, and Shepherd's Lunchroom. Kim's contagious energy and enthusiastic approach to volunteering is to be commended. She continues to give her time to assist and help her community. I encourage all members of this legislature to join me and thank Kim Livingston for her volunteer work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Lunenburg West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, March 4th marked the 10th and final David Atkinson Memorial Bonspiel for Cancer. In memory of a young local athlete, the Bonspiel has become a successful fundraiser, supporting most recently the Journey Room, and acts as a venue for friends and family of David to gather once a year and share memories of a remarkable young man. There are several volunteers whose tireless efforts allow this fundraiser to happen. If it weren't for the efforts of Neil Powers, Kathy McDonald, Debbie Phillips, Debbie Reed, Bernadette Sanford, Mark Atkinson, Nick Saunders, Sean Wynott, Alison Weigel, Al Sullivan, Al and Doreen Oikel, and Sue Atkinson, this tournament could not happen. Thank you for your dedication to this event and providing a venue for us all to remember an amazing young man. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Colchester, Musquodoboit Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Dr. Dave Henderson's passion and dedication to enhancing and advocating for palliative care in northern Nova Scotia was recently recognized when he was awarded the Honourable Sharon Carstairs Palliative Care Award of Excellence in Advocacy. The Quality End of Life Care Coalition of Canada presents this award to individuals who have at the national level contributed to and had an impact upon the enhancement of the quality of life for individuals and their loved ones who are facing a life-threatening illness and bereavement. When accepting the award, Dr. Henderson shared the credit of the success of the Colchester East Hants Palliative Care Program with his team of hardworking, dedicated palliative care nurses. Congratulations, Dr. Dave Henderson and his team on this well-deserved recognition. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Just to make a note to members, we're going to delay the beginning of QP just by a few minutes while we deal with a request from the Leader of the Official Opposition. The Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, earlier today I submitted a request pursuant to Rule 43.2 that the business of the House be set aside for a purpose of urgent public importance. namely the fairness and legitimacy of the province's electoral boundaries. The legitimacy of the boundaries was brought into question when the Nova Scotia Court of Appeal ruled that the former Attorney General's intervention in the boundary process violated the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It appears that the Premier is prepared to call an election on boundaries that may not be constitutional. I ask that you allow this urgent debate so that a remedy can be found before irreparable damage is done to our democratic system. Thank you.
So I did receive notice from the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition more than 2 hours before the opening of today's sitting in accordance with our rule number 43.2. An emergency debate is, quote, for the purpose of discussing a matter of urgent public importance, end quote. The basis for this request for an emergency debate is based upon the January 24th, 2017 decision of the Nova Scotia Court of Appeal holding that the abolition of the former electoral districts of Clare, Argyll, and Richmond violated Section 3 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and was not saved by Section 1 of the Charter. The decision makes it clear that the constitutional issue respecting the electoral boundaries is not necessarily with the boundaries themselves, but with the process in arriving at the boundaries. The court puts it as follows, quote, we do not state that Section 3 of the Charter requires that there be protected ridings in Clare, Argyll, and Richmond. Rather, under Section 3, the body that is authorized by law to craft the electoral boundaries must be allowed to balance the constitutional criteria as set out by the majority's reasons in Carter and to express its view on the matter, end quote. The court also points out that its decision is a response to a reference to the court and not an application to the court for a declaration striking down the electoral boundaries. The electoral boundaries therefore stand, and the decision of the court provides constitutional guidance to any future review of the electoral boundaries in accordance with Section 5 of the House of Assembly Act. The next Electoral Boundaries Commission must be appointed no later than December 6, 2022. Although the House of Assembly is free to initiate the process sooner and may wish to do so in view of the court's decision. Clearly, the matter raised by the Leader of the Opposition is a matter of public importance, but not, in my opinion, an urgent matter. Also, one of the factors that I have to consider is the probability of the matter being debated by the House within a reasonable amount of time by other means. In considering this, I have the benefit of previous rulings made by former speakers of this House. On December 8, 2010, considering a request for an emergency debate, Speaker Parker said the following, quote, as members will know, there have been several requests for emergency debates in my time as Speaker, and I've granted each of those requests based on the requirements set out on Rule 43. In each case, one of the matters I must consider in deciding is whether the business of the House be set aside to discuss a matter of urgent public importance as set out in Rule 43(4)(a), end quote, and have regard to the probability of the matter being debated by the House within a reasonable period of time by other means, end quote. Members have just heard from the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition requesting that the government look at this issue, or a request from government by the school boards to a planning exercise of 22% reduction of their budgets and the cuts that may have on primary to grade 12 education. As referenced by the member, he is referring to the Options and Opportunities Program, the Autism's Program, the Math Mentors, and so on. In carrying out this function under Rule 43, the Speaker must have regard to whether there are already any items on the order paper dealing with the same subject under which it could be raised in debate during a reasonable period of time. I've looked at the order paper, and there is on the order paper resolution number 2490. I'm not going to read it word for word, but it does cover many of the issues that the honourable member has raised here. End quote of Speaker Parker. I note that this issue, the electoral boundaries issue, was also considered by the member for Sydney River, pardon me, scratch that. I was improvising, but I'll learn not to do that. I note that this issue was also considered by the member for Sydney River, Myra Lewisburg, when he was Speaker. In 2008, he stated with respect to a request for an emergency debate, it is not on the order paper for discussion, and I have no indication that it is likely to be debated within a reasonable time by other means, before allowing the matter to be considered for the leave of the House. In this case, the electoral boundaries issue, there are 2 notices of motion respecting this issue that have been on the order paper since February 2017 and which are available for debate. These are notices of motion 888 and 889, both moved by the Honourable Leader for the official opposition, both of which are available to debate. I also need to consider whether the matter raised concerns of administrative responsibilities of the government or could come within the scope of ministerial action. In his letter to me, the Honourable Leader of the official opposition specifically states that, quote, this matter does not concern the administrative responsibilities of government alone, nor does it come within the scope of ministerial action, end quote. That position argues against the matter being suitable for urgent debate. Finally, Rule 43, bracket 10, bracket D, places a restriction that the motion must not revive discussion on a matter which has been discussed in the same session, end quote. Members will recall that the matter has been raised in this House several times in the previous sitting, both in question period and in debate. Based on all of the foregoing information, I've decided that this matter should not be given urgent consideration. We'll now move on to opposition oral questions put by members to ministers. The Leader of the official opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, the Premier announced that his government has purchased 15 acres of land in Bayers Lake. What he didn't tell the people of Nova Scotia, Mr. Speaker, is that he paid 12 times the assessed value for that land. Nova Scotians are scratching their heads over this latest deal, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to ask the Premier to explain to them why his government paid 12 times the assessed value for that land.
The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the Honourable Member for the question. It's my pleasure to stand up and tell all this House we're on track with the redevelopment of the QE2. We knew we're a generation, quite frankly, that gets an opportunity to reshape the healthcare delivery model. When you look at the outpatients and some of the day surgeries that are being offered downtown, Mr. Speaker, it made more sense to move them out where the people were. We began to realize 60% of the people who are using the QE2 actually come from outside. Of the 40% that live in HRM, very few live on the peninsula, Mr. Speaker. So what we did was looked at where's the traffic, where's the volume coming to. We looked at where the 102, the 103 converged. There was a number of sites. TIR went through a number of explanations. We came down to a site that has been prepped, ready to go, and we're looking forward to the construction beginning on that so that Nova Scotians can continue to get an improved healthcare service that we've been providing them for the last 3 years.
The Honourable Leader of the official opposition on his first supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's very telling that the Premier didn't answer the question about why he paid 12 times the assessed value for that land. Mr. Speaker, no wonder this area is called a whopper drop when we get an answer like that. This is the latest in a string of bad deals that this government has made, spending taxpayers' money, Mr. Speaker, like it's going out of style. In this case, a developer paid for this very piece of land just 3 years ago, paying $52,000 an acre. Last week, the Premier announced that he was buying that land for $500,000 an acre, Mr. Speaker. That's what Nova Scotians want answers to. Here's the thing, Mr. Speaker, it was untendered. There was no tender to try and get a good deal for taxpayers. Why did this land purchase go untendered?
The Honourable Premier.
And Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honourable Member for the question. If you paid attention to the original answer, we would have recognized that we looked at where the people were coming from that were using the facility. 60% are from outside. Of the 40% from HRM, Mr. Speaker, many live outside in the surrounding area we're looking at. We looked at a number of sites. TIR went out and looked at a number of sites, expressive interest. We looked at where the roads connected, whether those lots would be serviced, the work that would be required. Mr. Speaker, this lot will be ready, pad ready for the development. TIR went through a number of negotiations. This ended up being the best price, best value. And Mr. Speaker, we're looking for continuing to deliver those services to Nova Scotia.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on his final supplementary.
So let's get this straight, Mr. Speaker. Here's how the Premier uses taxpayers' money. They looked at all the options, decided that this is the only one they wanted, and then they approached that person and asked for the price. Well, Mr. Speaker, imagine deciding you want to buy a new car, and you look at all the models, and you decide you want a Honda, you go to one place, the Honda dealer, and you ask for the price. What kind of price are you going to get in that situation, Mr. Speaker? You're going to pay a very high price. The Premier has made Nova Scotians pay a price 10 times the purchase price from just 3 years ago. He can defend that deal if he wants to, Mr. Speaker, but I will ask him this. If he's so confident in this deal, will he release all the documents, all the emails, all the background information on that purchase before the end of business today so Nova Scotians can judge for themselves?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the honourable member for the question. I think Nova Scotians are judging for themselves, Mr. Speaker. That's why we've had such a positive response to that decision.
The Honourable Leader in the House for the New Democratic Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Premier. Mr. Speaker, the Premier has said that this government's recent spending spree is a result of, and I quote, good fiscal management, and I'll table this. Mr. Speaker, I'm wondering if the Premier can explain to the healthcare workers, to the patients and the staff of nursing homes, to teachers, students, farm workers, community groups, and all Nova Scotians, Mr. Speaker, have starving the province for 3.5 years in order to finance a Liberal pre-election spending spree is good fiscal management.
The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the last 3.5 years, we put $65 million into classrooms. We put $70 million into home care, Mr. Speaker. We continue to invest in services across the province. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, putting this province back into fiscal health after the mess that member and the former NDP government left this province in. Mr. Speaker, it provided us the opportunity to be in Shelburne to welcome 2 new doctors, one of the nurse practitioners that we announced, Mr. Speaker, family practitioners, all moving into Shelburne, Mr. Speaker, at the same time, as we work with the community to build a collaborative practice. It's unfortunate the honourable member wasn't there to celebrate with his community.
The Honourable Leader in the House for the New Democratic Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've heard the broken record before. Mr. Speaker. Good fiscal management, Mr. Speaker. This government has spent nearly $1 million studying, I repeat, studying, Mr. Speaker, whether to privatize our registries that bring in over $100 million in profit a year to this beautiful province. Mr. Speaker, for 3.5 years, Nova Scotians has been told that there's no money, that the cupboard is bare. It turns out, yes, Mr. Speaker, there is money, lots of it, but the money had to be squirreled away for the Liberals' pre-election spending fund. And to think, Mr. Speaker, that this is a government that promised to put Nova Scotians
Does the member have a question?
So I ask the Premier, how can Nova Scotian trust this government that he has put the needs of his Liberal Party ahead of the needs of the people of this province?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, again, I want to thank the honourable member for the question. I want to thank all Nova Scotians who have worked so hard to ensure that we get ourselves back to fiscal health. I want to thank, Mr. Speaker, all those Nova Scotians who continue to support our government as we make those investments in classrooms, as we provide home care, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that seniors get an opportunity to stay in their homes as long as possible. Continuing to make those investments to ensure that young Nova Scotians get their first job opportunity here at home, Mr. Speaker, with graduate opportunities. We're going to continue, Mr. Speaker, to make the right decisions for Nova Scotians. The honourable member, and I hear the member from Chora, Bobble Hill, Salmon River and Millbrook, talking about it, Mr. Speaker. The issue was she chose to put all of it in wages to her friends in the labour movement as opposed to investing in classrooms. We took a balance. We were glad for affordable wage increases at the same time we've invested in services.
The order, please. The Honourable Leader in the House for the New Democratic Party.
You know who seems to have some good fiscal management skills, Mr. Speaker? You know who? It is a developer who is selling the lands in Bears Lake to this Liberal government. The developer bought 177 acres of land for just $9.4 million and is now in line to almost the money back on just 15 acres of that land to this government. So, Mr. Speaker, I know that the development has given $3,000 to this Liberal Party, so I'd like to ask if the developer will be also giving the Premier any lessons in good fiscal management.
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honourable Member for the question. As he would know, and the Honourable Member asked the question earlier, that piece of land was part of a number of parcels we looked at. It was purchased at one point, Mr. Speaker. That property is being developed, as he knows. Mr. Speaker, the question for the Honourable Member is, did he sell his lobster license when he retired for the same as he paid for it in the beginning? I doubt so, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition. Order, please. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, last week the Premier paid $500,000 an acre for the Whopper Drop land in Bayers Lake. That land was purchased just 3 years previously for $50,000 an acre. He paid 10 times more only 3 years later, Mr. Speaker. He defends that with the exact same kind of thinking that explains the Yarmouth Ferry deal, that explains the overruns on the Blue Nose, Mr. Speaker. This is a Premier that cannot be trusted with taxpayers' money. If it was such a good deal, Mr. Speaker, it should have been tendered. I'll ask the Premier a straight-up question. Why did he not ensure that that land went to tender for taxpayers' value?
The Honourable Premier.
Speaker, again, I want to thank the Honourable Member. As he knows, I went through this process a few minutes ago. 60% of the people that use that facility come from outside. Of the 40% in HRM are in and around that area. We looked, TIR looked at a number of pieces of land, Mr. Speaker. They narrowed it down to 2. They negotiated with those developers. They landed on this piece of land that when the person bought, Mr. Speaker, was a stranded piece of real estate. They made improvements to it. We're continuing to support it. It's the right piece of place for us to be building this facility, Mr. Speaker, and we're going to continue to enhance the healthcare system in this province.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Premier full well knows that the only way he can show that he got good value is if he'd done an open tender. And he knows that because he used to believe it when he was in opposition, when the NDP went the untendered route for office space in Cornwallis. The Premier said at that time that the government appears to have done a deal with little regard for taxpayers' money. I have no idea why, direct quote, other than the fact that they were desperately trying to get this move done before an election, Mr. Speaker. And the Premier also said this is the exact kind of thing you run into when you don't tender something, Mr. Speaker. Critical of the NDP for wasting taxpayers' money without tender. Now he defends it. Let's ask the Premier, what changed? Why are untendered NDP deals bad and his good?
The Honourable Premier.
Speaker, again, I want to thank the Honourable Member for the question. As we started through this process, I told the Honourable Member we're a generation. It's an opportunity to shape our healthcare delivery model. I'm very proud of the investments we made in Dartmouth General, where the 3rd and 4th floor are being developed. The 5th floor is on way. There will be 8 operating theatres that'll be there. I'm very pleased, Mr. Speaker, with the 2nd OR that's being opened in West Hanson, Mr. Speaker. 800 surgeons, we moved out to there. We also looked at that there were 60% of the people going to the Victoria General Hospital was for stuff, Mr. Speaker, that wasn't needing to be downtown, was coming from outside. The 40% of HRM was coming from a large catchment area. We looked all through that area. We found a number of sites. We negotiated down with a number of developers. We ended up, Mr. Speaker, with the best price for the best piece of land to continue to move the healthcare system forward.
The Honourable Member for Truro, Bible Hill, Millbrook, Salmon River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Premier has repeatedly said that there was no room in the fiscal envelope to negotiate with teachers. The government's unwillingness to negotiate in good faith resulted in the first province-wide teachers' strike in the history of Nova Scotia. Well, in the past few weeks, Mr. Speaker, there seems to be absolutely no cap on pre-election spending in order to do damage control and try to garner votes, while there is a clear cap on specific proposals to improve classroom conditions. So, Mr. Speaker, will the Premier admit today his mistakes when it comes to the way he has treated the teachers of this province and repeal Bill 75?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the honourable member for the question. I want to thank all those teachers across the province who day in and day out are standing in front of our kids in classrooms, providing wonderful education, Mr. Speaker. I particularly want to thank those 15 teachers who've come in and been part of the commission who are working very hard to provide solutions going forward, Mr. Speaker. What's disappointing, Mr. Speaker, is the honourable member is prepared to stand with the Nova Scotia Teachers Union executive instead of standing with teachers.
The honourable member for Truro, Bible Hill, Millbrook, Salmon River.
Well, I would challenge the Premier any day to come to Truro and watch me standing with all my teachers there, Mr. Speaker. That is a direct invitation. Mr. Speaker, when the teachers came to negotiation table, the Premier told them, "This is all I have." He said the province was broke, that the cupboard was bare, and yet suddenly, like magic in the last month on the eve of election, he seems to have found a fountain of gold, spending more than $70 million all over the province. He was even mentioned by Steve Murphy on CTV. So, Mr. Speaker, my question is, will the Premier... Mr. Speaker, Steve Murphy was surprised that suddenly he came up with all this money. So would the Premier explain to us and to Steve Murphy why he thinks payroll rebates for big businesses are more important than kids?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the honourable member for the question. As she would know, Mr. Speaker, negotiations are always tough, Mr. Speaker. We had on the table a 3% pay raise over 4 years. Mr. Speaker, 3 times the Nova Scotia Teachers Union executive accepted that, Mr. Speaker, as well as freezing the long service award. Mr. Speaker, when she was in government, she made a choice. She provided 7.5% pay raises over 3 years and cut $65 million of the classrooms. Let the QE2, Mr. Speaker, become falling apart, Mr. Speaker. We've taken a different path. We've provided an affordable wage increase. At the same time, we're making these strategic investments in infrastructure all across the province so that Nova Scotians can get the services they deserve.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Premier paid 12 times the assessed value for that land at Whopper Drop in Bayers Lake. That's money that could have gone into more doctors, that could have gone into more clinics, that could have gone into more emergency rooms, Mr. Speaker. He thinks he got a good deal. He thought he has a good deal with the Blue Nose. He thought he made a good deal on the Yarmouth Ferry. Taxpayers know that he doesn't make good deals. In fact, Mr. Speaker, they know that he is wasting their money instead of being careful with it. He defends the deal here, Mr. Speaker. I will ask him a straight-up yes or no question. Will he release all the documents related to that land purchase today so Nova Scotians can see for themselves?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the hard-working people at TIR who continue to go out to make sure, Mr. Speaker, that we look at all of the possible options that were there, Mr. Speaker. They went out, assessed a number of pieces of property, get down and negotiate, Mr. Speaker, to find what was the best deal for Nova Scotians.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
I guess that's a no, Mr. Speaker, which will just make people even more suspicious of what went on here. It is not lost on them that after this process that the Premier is so proud of, that land purchase for 12 times its value was made with a significant donor to the Liberal Party. And that's why the Auditor General has been called to look into it, Mr. Speaker. If this is such a good deal, why is the Auditor General being called to look into that purchase?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, because the honourable member is asking him to do so, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is now calling into question the hard-working public servants who work on behalf of all Nova Scotians to ensure that we continue to have, Mr. Speaker, the right investments for Nova Scotians. They've gone out, Mr. Speaker, they've looked at a number of pieces of land. They ended up narrowing those down to a number of pieces. Mr. Speaker, we're looking forward to that. It's unfortunate that the honourable member continues to be so negative about a province that is moving forward.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, we absolutely did ask the Auditor General to look into it because the Premier is hiding behind all of these words, but he won't do these simple, transparent things like tender the land in the first place or release the documents that show how this decision got made, Mr. Speaker. You would think that the Premier of Nova Scotia would want to know what went on with this land purchase that was 12 times the assessed value, but instead he doesn't want to know, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask the Premier, will he join the opposition and call on the Auditor General to review the very documents that he is hiding from the people of Nova Scotia so he can tell us whether we had a good deal or not?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I'm way too optimistic about the future of this province to join the opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
And you know what, Mr. Speaker, we're optimistic that someday we're going to get a straight answer from this Premier about what he's doing with taxpayers' money. We've asked him to make all the information publicly available. He refuses. Why? We've asked him to share the information with the Auditor General. He refuses. Why, Mr. Speaker? This is why people are questioning not the department, far from it, Mr. Speaker. They're questioning the integrity of that Premier and this government. That's the question. It is incumbent on the Premier, before there is an election, to clear the air on why he paid 12 times the value for that land. Will he clear the air and release all those documents, yes or no?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, let's be clear. Any information the Auditor General has asked for this government, we've provided, Mr. Speaker. It is unfortunate the Honourable Member cannot see that this province is moving forward and celebrate along with every other Nova Scotian.
The Honourable House Leader for the New Democratic Party.
Mr. Speaker, today Nova Scotia has made the news again for the crisis in our emergency department, and I'll table an article, Mr. Speaker. Code Census allows emergency department staff to alleviate pressure when there is overcrowding by forcing units throughout the hospital to accept patients. In Halifax Infirmary, a code census was called 23 out of 31 days in January, and unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, during those days, at least one patient died in the hallway, and the family of that patient tells how the crowded hospital failed her husband. This human suffering is the direct impact of the crisis of our hospitals trying to operate well beyond their capacity. So I'd like to ask the Premier, does the Premier think this is acceptable?
The Honourable Premier.
I apologize to the Honourable Member. I thought he was going to the Minister of Health, and in order to do him justice, I would, if he wouldn't mind repeating that question, if you're okay with that, Mr. Speaker, I do apologize.
The Honourable House Leader for the New Democratic Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just wondering if the Premier thinks it's acceptable to hear about the unfortunate death of a patient in the hallway during code census at the QE2.
The Honourable Premier.
Thank you to the Honourable Member, and I appreciate him repeating that question. Mr. Speaker, all of us, when our loved ones are requiring health care services in the province, of course, when there's a passing, we all mourn for that family. We know that the member spoke about the code that was called for the facility. It is an opportunity to look at whether there's more staff required to come in. I want to reassure all Nova Scotians, though, Mr. Speaker, as they enter into our healthcare system, regardless of whether it's in urban or rural Nova Scotia, we have professional healthcare providers and quality infrastructure that is providing top quality healthcare.
The Honourable House Leader for the New Democratic Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the article that I tabled, senior staff at the Nova Scotia Health Authority agreed that the patient should not have spent 7 hours in the hallway, but the system is at capacity. The overcrowding of emergency departments is at a crisis level, and emergency room closures are moving in the wrong direction. There has been a very real human toll as a result of the political decision to merge the DHAs and not making health delivery the priority, Mr. Speaker. So I'd like to ask the Premier, will the Premier explain why the government hasn't made any progress and in fact has made the status of our emergency care in the province worse?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honourable Member for the question. We all feel for this family and families who loved ones are lost, Mr. Speaker. I think it's a big stretch to suggest, Mr. Speaker, that the amalgamation, the elimination, tearing down walls is causing the issue the member is referring to. What we're doing is continuing to work with our healthcare providers in all levels to make sure that people are receiving the right care in the right place. I would agree with the Honourable Member that is unacceptable at the level of time. Person was in the hallway, there are good circumstances in and around that. The Minister will be continuing to work with not only that site, but also with our healthcare providers to ensure that we continue to improve the delivery of healthcare in this province. But again, I want to reassure all Nova Scotians that as they enter into our healthcare system, they are entering into an environment where professional healthcare providers are there, top quality healthcare is there, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that they return home to their families.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On May 5th of last year, the Health Minister said in this House that he expected a statement, timeline, and, quote, a robust plan in place soon, quote, soon, to address inconsistencies in case management and treatment of people presenting at the province's ERs with suicidal ideation and multiple suicide attempts. That still hasn't happened, Mr. Speaker. So when is soon going to be, and when will a plan be announced and implemented?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite. In fact, just this week, I toured the new ER at the Aberdeen, and now in Pictou there is a crisis team in place to deal with any trauma that does enter the hospital. And once the new site is up and operating, in fact, there'll be 2 observational beds. There'll be a secure area for anybody in trauma. We have this being duplicated across the province, and I would say provincially we're in a much better place to respond to mental health emergencies.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth East.
Mr. Speaker, it's a year later, and last year the Minister of Health stood in this chamber during budget estimates and promised that he had met with Dr. Linda Corey and he would be out with her and announce a robust plan and a timeline to address inconsistencies across all ERs in the province. So there were standards in place. Many doctors and nurses in this province's ERs say there are still many inconsistencies in the area of critical care. Why has it not been a priority for this minister over the past year when he said in this House on May 5th of last year it was going to be a priority and would happen soon?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'm not sure the member opposite knows, or members of the House, but mental health was one of the 7 areas that the Health Authority was preparing a plan for. We know that in our emergency rooms, doctors, in fact, a number of them have now received further professional development around in the mental health area. Many of them, of course, are trained, obviously, for the physical medical emergencies, and now a number have been trained and are ready to deal with patients who present with mental health traumas.
The Honourable Member for Pictou West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My question through you is to the Minister of Justice. Recent comments by a judge in a sexual assault case sparked outrage in Nova Scotia, and I'm pretty certain, Mr. Speaker, that we are all aware of what case I am referring to. This Liberal government had an opportunity to harness that public interest in protecting survivors of sexual assault and transform it into action. My question is, why didn't the minister commit to working with MLAs from all parties to make our province a leader in supporting survivors of sexual violence?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And certainly, just to preface my answer, it's important to know that when we have any comments in the public about judges, the Attorney General and Minister of Justice would never criticize a judge. That's not our role, and we would not do that, and that's part of the separation of duties and the pillars of our society. So I think that's important for you to know. But we have responded, and I would like to just tell the member a few things. We've agreed that there will be 2 new specialized prosecutors at the Public Prosecution Service that will specialize in sexual assault, that there will be money from the Victim Services budget that will allow for victims of sexual assault to have their own legal services, to have 4 hours of legal services. That's a request that's in, and we're very confident that will come. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Pictou West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I do thank the Minister for her answer. However, the fact is that the Progressive Conservative Caucus did ask that the government dedicate this spring session to protecting survivors of sexual assault. We offered to work with all parties to introduce and pass a comprehensive bill. It's a nonpartisan issue, Mr. Speaker. When people are brave enough to come forward, we as legislators have a duty to make sure they are treated fairly and definitely with dignity. Will the Minister please commit to supporting legislation that provides survivors of sexual assault with confidence the justice system will not fail them?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you very much again, Mr. Speaker. And I think it's really important that we remember that this province was the first ever to bring in a sexual assault strategy. And the Minister of Community Services and Status of Women has overseen that strategy for 3 years, and it's been very successful. It's raised awareness, and I think we can credit it with a lot of the awareness around the public response that we saw in the last month. In addition to that, what we'll continue to do is work hard to provide the services through victim services, through all of the partners in the justice system to ensure that victims will come forward, bring their complaints and charges, and that we can have justice for all. Thank you.
The honourable member for Pictou West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My question through you is to the Minister of Municipal Affairs. Last week, a report by the Auditor General into expenses at the Municipality of Guysborough characterized spending by the former warden and other officials as indulgent and opportunistic. The former warden charged thousands and thousands of dollars in personal expenses to the municipal credit card and what amounted to a number of short-term loans from taxpayers. He treated this privilege as a luxury. What oversight measures is the minister putting in place to end this indulgent spending of taxpayer dollars by municipal officials?
The Honourable Minister of Municipal Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I do want to clarify that I do not agree with the characterization that member has presented to this House. I know that member. I know that he serves the interests of his people always, and I know that Ombudsman's report indicated there was no misappropriation of funds, Mr. Speaker. And I do not appreciate that member, and I would hope that she would learn from other members in her caucus who have used slanderous language in attacking our municipal officials, who have had to apologize publicly for it. Mr. Speaker. I would urge her and her caucus not to paint every single person with the same negative brush.
The honourable member for Pictou West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I did not slander. Mr. Speaker, the former warden of the municipality of the District of Guysborough told Auditor General investigators that he believes alcohol greases the wheels of government, and I'm going to table these quotes. He said, alcohol is a process, an accepted process for the way society, as a general rule, to me, it's all part of the devices and tools that will get you where you need to be in terms of the objectives for the municipality. And I can table that right now. Mr. Speaker, it's time to change the attitude and culture in municipalities from one alcohol-fueled deal making to one of accountability for the taxpayer. So I want to know, does the minister agree with his colleague that alcohol is an accepted process that will get you where you need to be?
The Honourable Minister of Municipal Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, again, there is a provincial policy in place.
Order, please. The Honourable Minister of Municipal Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. There is a policy in place provincially around use of alcohol for hospitality reasons. We are going to standardize the rules across the province for every single municipal unit to bring it in line with provincial regulations in that matter, Mr. Speaker. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, the changes that we will be bringing forward will ensure that all expenses are online, they're open, transparent, so Nova Scotians can judge for themselves on where their tax dollars are being spent, Mr. Speaker. And I look forward to the day when all members in this House will support us in bringing that piece of legislation forward.
The Honourable House Leader for the New Democratic Party.
We have all next week.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Health. Yesterday, we learned of the recent death of 6 residents at Arborstone Enhanced Care who died in the past 2 weeks after contracting a respiratory infection. All 6 residents lived on the same floor, Mr. Speaker. It has been reported that family members were not informed about the outbreak until their family members were quite ill. So I'd like to ask the Minister, can the Minister of Health please explain why there was a delay in informing the family members about this outbreak, of this fatal virus?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I know that when there were multiple deaths at Arborstone, the management and as well as the owners of the Shannocks home
did reach out to NSHA, Department of Health and Wellness, as well as, and obviously triggered public health to take a look at why there were multiple deaths. And I don't have the detailed information on how they communicated with families. I know they put notice in the facility that this infection, respiratory infection, was now in the institution, but they worked to balance both the visiting ability to meet with loved ones as well as mitigate against the infection.
The Honourable House Leader for the New Democratic Party.
Mr. Speaker, I think all members of the House would like to offer our condolences to the families who lost loved ones. Sadly, families are wondering if their loved one's illness could have been caught and treated earlier if the nursing home had more staff, and we also share those concerns, Mr. Speaker. So I'd like to ask the Minister, will the Department be looking into the circumstances that led to the deaths of 6 residents at Arborstone Enhanced Care?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I certainly join with member opposite in expressing condolences to all of the families involved. And we heard from one of the wives this morning speak about the loss of her elderly husband, and I expressed the same to the media today. But in terms of this issue, I know that anytime there are deaths and adversely numbers, in this case here, the department will review what has transpired and taken place. What I do know in checking on staffing, the complement of staffing that is required by the province was in place, 24/7 nursing, LPN support and CCA in the home, and but certainly we will have more information as we go forward.
The Honourable Member for Pictou East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Internal Services. Documents obtained through a Freedom of Information request show that an employee of the Department of Agriculture was planning to make a presentation at a community meeting in Cumberland North on January 30th, but was later told that they could not make that presentation. Documents show that the employee was not aware that approval was needed, since they had made similar presentations many times over the past couple of years without undergoing an approval process. My question for the Minister of Internal Services, will the Minister tell the House what rules are in place for civil servants to speak at public events, and where can those rules be found?
The Honourable Minister of Internal Services.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not familiar with the case the member is speaking about, but I'm more than happy to get the information from him, who the employee is, what the speaking engagement was regarding, and look into it for him. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Pictou East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and we will follow up with that, because there is some confusion as to whether there's rules, one set of rules, 2 sets of rules, 3 sets of rules, whatever, because we do know through another FOIPOP request that the member from Cumberland North, corresponding back and forth with senior transportation bureaucrats about their attendance at a public meeting, had no problem getting them there. In fact, nowhere in that FOIPOP is there any mention of needing approval. And in fact, the member from Cumberland North told the civil servants that they are the show. What a show, what a show. I'm sure they probably put on, Mr. Speaker. But here we have 2 meetings in the same constituency, in the same town. So will the minister explain why civil servants were denied approval to attend a meeting with the agriculture, but were given carte blanche to attend the meeting for the member from Cumberland
The
North?
Honourable Minister of Internal Services.
Mr. Speaker, the only shows whenever that member gets up and speaks.
The Honourable Member for Kings North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, in 2016, August 18th, the Minister of Health announced a hospice for the Annapolis Valley. At the time, it was stated that there was a goal of opening the hospice by the middle of 2019. A goal. Mr. Speaker, my question is that opening date still a goal, and does the Minister think that that will be a goal that will be scored?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Pleased to inform the member opposite that, in fact, this week I met with the architects for the hospice, and while there was, a little bit of challenge with some aspects of design and location, they are now in certainly in a much more hurried up fashion to get this started. We know that this has been a long journey. We also need to confirm with those who have made generous donations that the work will be underway shortly.
The Honourable Member for Kings North.
I'm not sure, Mr. Speaker, whether to think that that goal is still achievable or not. But, Mr. Speaker, at the Valley Hospice announcement, 2 items normally associated with a construction announcement were strangely missing. There was no building design plan and there was no budget. It would seem the hospice announcement was missing these details despite the fact that it had only been about 7 or 8 years in the planning stage. Can the minister confirm that there is an actual building design and a budget, and can he table both of these in the legislature today, seeing that he's already announced the bill 6 months ago?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Selecting the final site on the grounds of Valley Regional Hospital was, in fact, up to the Hospice Association to make that decision. Looking at final design and costing is what the NSHA and the Hospice Association have been working on. I know at their May 4th meeting, there will be much more, significant plans that will be coming forward. And what I can assure the member opposite that the goal, in fact, is to break ground this fall and work through the winter on the hospice.
The Honourable Leader in the House for the New Democratic Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Premier. Media has reported that officials in the U.S. government has confirmed that the maritime exclusion for softwood lumber has been eliminated. This news is a disappointing outcome for the lumber industry in Nova Scotia, who are an important part of our economy, particularly in rural Nova Scotia. While it's not the decision that we hope for, the government has known for some time that this result was possible. So I'd like to ask the Premier what his government will do to fight this decision, and in the meantime, how is the plan to support the lumber industry in this difficult time?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Minister of Trade for the tremendous work he's been doing across, not only with our neighbours, Mr. Speaker, in international trade, but the fact we've been able to tear down trade barriers within inside of our province. The Honourable Member that is referring to, the situation he's referring to, we continue to work on that. Report that he's referring to has not been confirmed, Mr. Speaker. We have been in contact. We're looking forward to when the announcement will come out, either later this evening or tomorrow, on what that ruling will be. But I want to assure the honourable member that we have defended the force, and we will continue to do so.
The Honourable Leader in the House for the New Democratic Party.
Mr. Speaker, past negotiations about the maritime exclusion were led by the industry-led Maritime Lumber Bureau. However, this time around, the provincial government took charge. So I'd like to ask the Premier why there was a change in who led these negotiations and if he thinks that they had any impact on the outcome.
The Honourable Premier.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as I said earlier in my first question, the Honourable Member doesn't know the outcome, Mr. Speaker. We don't know the outcome. All I can tell the Honourable Member is that we've stood up for Nova Scotia's interest.
The Honourable Member for Colchester, Musqueam Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Community Services. Earlier this month, CBC featured a story about a husband and wife, the Pikes, who act as foster parents to many sick and sometimes terminal young children in the province. According to the department, there are just over 1,000 children in the care of the province. Of these children, roughly 400 are not in foster care for various reasons. How many children in care are not in foster care due to having high needs?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. It depends on the physical and mental health needs and cognitive needs of children in care. We make every effort, and it is a priority, to make sure that we match foster parents to the needs of children. I watched that CBC program on the Pikes, and they truly are angels among us. They take the children who are oftentimes terminal, and they give them end-of-life care that every child deserves that is in that situation. I'm happy to report that the Pikes today are in the process of picking up their new van. Mrs. Pike is picking the color for the foster children that she currently has in her care that need access and transportation.
The honourable member for Colchester, Musquodoboit Valley.
We certainly know that a family like the Pikes is very, very rare, and not everyone is undertaking that responsibility for a child who has great needs of health conditions and care needs. We need to salute people like the Pikes for their great compassion and commitment. My question is, as the province phases out the larger institutions like Kings County Rehabilitation Centre, where will the children with high needs be placed?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you. That actually is two separate issues. Children that are in residential care now generally aren't under the provincial care within the Child Welfare Services. What we've been doing and what we'll continue to do over the next 7 years now is continue to move children and adults and youth and older persons from the larger residential facilities back into community. In fact, over the last year with just $1.45 million, we've been able to move 47 people from larger residential facilities back into the community, and we'll continue to do more as we go forward. But it really is two different issues, children in care and children who are in residential facilities such as Kings.
The honourable member for Kings North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Agriculture. Mr. Speaker, last July, Minister of Agriculture from across the country committed to working together to enhance the sector's ability to prosper through competition, innovation, and new initiatives. This came in response to the need for a plan to grow sustainability after our government's Grow Forward 2 program ends next March. My question for the Minister is, during these meetings, what issues did the ministers discuss to ensure the renewal of the Grow Forward program?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you very much. We're in the process of working with our provincial colleagues and territorial colleagues, as well as the federal government, to put in place a Going Forward 3 program.
The honourable member for Kings North.
Mr. Speaker, at last year's Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture AGM, 2 resolutions were passed about the new agreement and some of the policy changes required to best meet the needs of the agriculture sector. One of the resolutions read, the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture requests that the Provincial Department of Agriculture take over the administration of the Agri-Stability Program at the provincial level or coordinate its administration at the maritime level. It went on to say, the provincial government and the Department of Agriculture to commit to a 5-year support and funding to the Homegrown Success Program so farmers can access multiple year funding in 1 year for larger scale projects that will help lead to organized progressive development on farms. My question for the Minister, can the Minister tell us if any of these issues will be addressed in the next 5-year agreement with the Federal Department of Agriculture?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you very much. Those are both very important topics, and indeed, we've been working with our provincial counterparts and our federal counterparts in that regard, and we've recently met again with the Federation of Agriculture in Nova Scotia to discuss these possibilities, and hopefully we'll be able to negotiate the new agreement.
Just for those keeping track, QP will conclude at 2:58. The honourable member for Colchester, Musquodoboit Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Health and Wellness. Certainly a lot of health care concerns do come through all of our offices for sure. I had a very interesting one a couple of weeks ago where this lady moved from out west. She's been here for a number of months now, but she had about 5 or 6 serious things wrong with her, and she'd end up going to emergency and so on. But no one could refer her to a specialist. just the way things were set up. So without a family doctor, how can patients with chronic illnesses or newly diagnosed symptoms receive a referral to a specialist when needed?
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And the member opposite raises a very, very important issue on the floor here today. This is an area that certainly goes beyond his riding, his individual case. We're finding a number of people, especially here in Metro, who, in their younger years relied upon going to a walk-in clinic. And now, as they get older and have a chronic disease or require a specialist report to come back, they certainly do need a family doctor. One of the areas that we now have available with the 811 identification is for people, in fact, to speak about the fact that they need to have a specialist report come back. We're trying to prioritize some of those who are on the list. It was wonderful to see last week that a number of nurse practitioners started in our clinics across the province. Some were collaborative practices, others were regular clinics, and this is allowing for a number of patients to be added.
The Honourable Member for Colchester, Musquodoboit Valley.
In this particular case, I was fortunate to locate a family doctor who would take her on. But there is another concern, somewhat in the same vein. If patients don't have a family doctor to maintain their medical records, and they have to attend emergency rooms and walk-in clinics, where do their test results and visitation summaries get filed and maintained?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Most doctors, in fact, pass their records on to a company that, for a fee, will house those documents. We've started the process of moving to one patient, one record, and there would be electronic record available in time when this is fully developed. But in the short term, they're often stored and do have to be retrieved in order for a specialist or a doctor to have access to those records.
The Honourable Member for Pictou West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My question through you is to the Minister of Health. We all know that we live in a province where we are trying to increase our population, yet we have the highest corporate taxes, the highest income tax, the highest power rates, or some of them anyway, and we're desperately trying to increase our population. And I'm curious to know, recently I had a young couple, 2 teachers, move from Fort McMurray, Alberta, and we're lucky enough, their house burned, they're lucky enough to get part-time jobs teaching, they want to hang their hat here. They have some medical conditions that need to be monitored on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. I want to know if the minister can tell me when I can tell them when they will have a doctor so that they don't head back west.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I was pleased to be in Westville at the collaborative practice last week to announce a nurse practitioner and the doctor. The doctor very clearly stated...
Order, please. Time allotted for oral questions put by members to ministers has expired. Just before we move on to government business, point of order from the Honourable House Leader for the official opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. During question period, while the member for Pictou West was quoting something from the Auditor General, the minister said that she was slandering another member of the House. So I was wondering if he could withdraw that from his statement.
I said other members of her caucus did, and they apologized for it publicly.
Order, please.
If you want to talk about that, we can't.
I'll take the point of order under advisement and come back. The Honourable Member for Clare Digby on an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish permission to make an introduction. I would ask the House to draw its attention to directly behind the Speaker's Gallery, where today we're joined by not only the founder of rural transportation in Nova Scotia, the founder of Le Transport de Clare, current member of NS Leo, and probably one of our largest advocates for people with disabilities. I would have to point out that he's probably here to watch the smooth transition of Bill 59 this week, and on behalf of all of his colleagues, Mr. Clarendon Robichaud, I'd ask the House to please stand and give a round warm applause.
The Honourable House Leader for the New Democratic Party on an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to draw members' attentions to the West Gallery, where we're joined today by Barry Abbott and Barbara Legay, who are from the Community Alliance. I'd like all members to give them a warm welcome.
The Honourable Minister of Justice on an introduction.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And a number of the people that I was going to mention have already been acknowledged with the specifics of their great work in work on disability issues and accessibility. But I did want to draw the members' attention, please, to note that there are a group of advocates that are here today. Jerry Post has been a spokesman for the Bill 59 Alliance and spoke yesterday at our Law Amendments Committee. He is here, and he is joined by Clarendon Robichaud, as was mentioned, and Barry Abbott, but also Linda Campbell and Barb Legay are in the gallery. And I think we may find other advocates that will join us through the afternoon. I'm not certain, but it means a great deal to have people here to watch the proceedings of the House and to be part of what can be a very historic process that we're going through for Bill 59 and the Accessibility Act in Nova Scotia. Thank you.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move that you do now leave the chair and that the House resolve itself into a committee of the whole on bills, and that committee resume, that we recess once you have left the chair, and the committee will reconvene at 3:15 this afternoon.
The House will now recess till 3:15 while it resolves itself into the Committee of the Whole House on Bills. We now stand recessed till 3:15.
The Committee of the Whole House on Bills will come to order. I recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, please call Bill number 59.
Bill number 59, the Accessibility Act. The Clerk.
Mr. Chair, Bill number 59 was reported back from the Law Amendments Committee earlier today. It contains 73 clauses and it was referred back to the House with amendments. For the ease of the members' reference, we have reprinted with changes as recommended to the House of Assembly by the Law Amendments Committee a copy of the bill which has been placed on all of the members' desks. And in the bill, there are what was originally in the bill that's been struck out is written in red with a line striking it out. Additions that were made by Law Amendments Committee are in blue and underlined, and the text that hasn't been changed remains in black. So for the ease of members, I believe that that has been, in fact, distributed and placed on all of their desks.
Thank you. I understand this bill was amended by the Committee on Law Amendments. Unless the House wishes to proceed with consideration of the clauses, I would ask that the Clerk that we waive, and unless the House wants to have it read, that it be waived. The Clerk.
Mr. Chair, I guess the question is if the House wishes me to read all of the amendments that are listed in red and in blue in the document distributed to them, or whether they would waive the reading of the amendments.
For the benefit of the committee, I want to explain that as we consider this bill and any other bill that may be called at this meeting, we will be considering the bill in the form contained on the amendments already by the Committee on Law Amendments. If I am asking this committee if a clause carries as amended, I will be referring to amendments that will have been moved during our debate in this committee. Is that agreed? If any honourable member wishes to propose a change to any of the amendments made by the Law Amendments Committee, the proper procedure is to move a new amendment during debate on the amended clause as we come into it in our debate here on the clauses of the bill. Shall clause 1 carry? I recognize the Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker or Mr. Chair. And I actually would like to speak to just the general changes that have been made overall to the Act, just so that people understand the process, because this bill had its first and second readings here in the fall setting of the Legislature, and a lot of things have happened in the ensuing months. And I think it was acknowledged yesterday by the members of the Law Amendments Committee that there's been a tremendously good working relationship between government and all parties, and I include there all members of the Legislature and the Bill 59 Alliance Group, which has come together in the ensuing months since the bill first was introduced to really give a voice to those people who have any interest in accessibility. 35 nonprofit and organizational groups came together under one banner. The leaders of that were people who spoke at the first Law Amendments Committee in November, and they did a tremendous job to bring together people who had shared common interest in this Act to try and speak as much as possible with one voice. But we recognize that there's a lot of different interests and different concerns that are represented, as there are in any group of Nova Scotians that come together. But I think that it's really important that here in the House we give recognition and appreciation to the group that have worked so hard to make this Act stronger and better. And they've done that through a series of intensive meetings themselves, and then meetings with government staff who have helped to draft changes, and those changes were brought to us at the Law Amendments Committee yesterday. But prior to that, we had a day and a half of hearings in early March with disability advocates and others who had an interest in this Act, with people from the business community, with university representatives, people that will be affected by changes. And all of the people have been kept in the loop. There's been tremendous cooperation and consultation. And I think we heard that yesterday when Jerry Post, who spoke at the committee and was asked to speak on behalf of the group, said that the Act, he gave a B+ to all the big changes changes that have been made, and I think that recognizes that when you're trying to make changes, it is a negotiation. Some things are easier to accommodate than others. Some things have broader implications, or we disagreed with where it might go. But the changes we're seeing today are really substantial. They're wide-ranging. We have improved the language in terms of strengthening the language. I felt, Mr. Chair, as a Minister of Justice, as this Act came over to our department, that we wanted to be able to address so many of the concerns, because I think some of it was misunderstanding. We believe the Act did encompass a lot of these things, and I know that the Minister of Community Services, who began the process, was deeply involved for many, many months with the Minister's Advisory Panel, which had done all the consultation and preparatory work to get us to the point where an Act was brought before the Legislature. And that work was extensive, and the report that she received from the panel was excellent. We want to acknowledge the work that team did. But at the same point, we know that there are years of disappointment in terms of government's response to the concerns of people with disabilities. And what we're doing here today is trying to put in place a process that is going to enable us to make those standards, to set a tight timeline, to make changes that will make this province fully accessible and truly accessible. And that's a very ambitious project, but it's going to happen. It will happen, and this Act commits every future government to those standards and to continuing with the development of them, with a goal of being a substantially improved province by 2030. So putting in the timeline so there was no ambiguity, including that within 1 year we'll have a work plan for those standards in place. We know that it's not going to be dragged out indefinitely. We'll have a work plan to get going. We've, as I said, put stronger language in so that we could use words like achieve rather than improve, which is a little bit less firm. We did listen to the advocates in the very first instance about changing departments, and the Minister of Community Services was very willing to work together to see that this be done, because it provided, I think, a different approach in that Department of Justice is responsible for human rights, and the disability advocates felt that this really is more similar to human rights than the functions and activities that happen in community services. And we accepted that right away, and we got to work right away to see that Department of Justice would have the resources and the expertise and the people with a lot of knowledge that could follow this Act over to the Department of Justice. And, you know, we're very proud of that, and we've worked closely together to make sure that that was a smooth transition. So that was accepted right away, and it's very symbolic and I think very a practical move. We've improved the preamble to this Act. We've changed, you'll see a lot of red and blue in the preamble and in the definitions, and all of that done in close consultation and setting out even the purpose of the Act in stronger words. So there's been a lot of amendments and a lot of rewriting of these things. Initially, a lot of concern about the emphasis on economic analysis or economic impact of the changes. We've downplayed that in the Act, so it only appears once now, and it is in terms of whether or not any businesses or organizations are given longer to adapt to standards. That's the time when it will have any implication. It doesn't mean that change is not coming, because it is going to come. So we've gone through a big part was to take away the discretion that rested with the minister. The original Act assumed that the minister, and of course the minister will often delegate authority, but the idea that the minister had that authority, I think was seen as that it could possibly be abused. And so that's been changed so that it is a directorate. We've got a director that's been named, and in that a whole section on the role of the director and the work that they would do, so that it is not resting at the discretion of a minister or any vagaries of where we might be in the future or whether a minister would want to take action. So we've made it a lot firmer by having a staff member, a director, that will look after complaints and the process of ensuring that annual reporting reporting is done, and so on. We also included something that wasn't there before, annual reports that will come out that will say what the inspectors have looked at, even where there were no I don't know if the word is charges, but nothing perhaps is done with it. No action taken. We'll still have a full report on what the inspectors looked at and whether or not they took action and what action was taken, so that annually we can look at that and see whether or not it's working as it should. Another important thing is that 4 years after this act comes into or is proclaimed, we'll have a review of it. And in 4 years, I want everybody to remember the process in Ontario. They're 10 years into a similar act. It's taken them roughly 2 years per standard that they develop. Each standard takes an awful lot of consultation and individual work. So 4 years in, we'll be at a point where compliance and some of the other issues will start to become, we'll actually start to see that the activity taking place, because until you get the standards, you won't be looking at the compliance. So I think that 4-year review, my point is the 4-year review is a great, I think, assurance to everybody that there's a chance to add things in if we feel something's been missing. We've got an opportunity at that point. And we also have the Accessibility Directorate and Accessibility Board that will continue to advocate for not just these standards, but all the other issues that are very pertinent and could come up at any time. That board and directorate have the responsibility to advise the minister in a similar way that the Disabled Persons Commission has done so in the past, although the terms of reference are a little bit different. So what I really want to say, and I know we're going to go through quickly, or maybe not quickly, I don't know, but we will be looking at the clauses, and there will be a lot of changes that you'll see. I wanted to give the overview so that you would see that there have been multiple changes that have just, I think, addressed concerns, given more information, ensured that we were explicit rather than putting things in that we felt were implicit and part of it, but not spelled out. We wanted to make sure we spelled it out as far as possible and responded to the excellent work that was done by the Bill 59 Alliance when they actually came to opposition parties, to my office. They met with Speaker Murphy. They met with everybody in government in order to keep us apprised of what they felt was most important to bring as changes. And I think that you will see that to a very large extent, the changes have been worked out between the drafters of the Act, government, and the Bill 59 Alliance. So really the biggest thing for all of us is that this is an amazing opportunity and an amazing time when members of the public do come together and form a group that can be so cohesive and so helpful in drafting a piece of legislation that really is historic for our province. And I think that we would all wish that more often that happened when we're trying to get a sense of what the public feels or how we can best draft or address a wrong. How can we move forward with new legislation? This has been a very great gift to all of us, to Nova Scotians, to have that ability to speak to a group that can represent such wide interests. So, Mr. Speaker, with that, or Mr. Chair, I'd like to allow the Act's individual clauses to be read, and we'll see what amendments are coming forward. But I think the context is clear today. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member for Argyle-Barrington.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chair. It's my honour to stand and speak for a few moments on Bill 59 as it sits before us today, an act respecting accessibility in Nova Scotia. And I'm going to try to do this as apolitically as I possibly can, which I know it's hard for me to not do that. The first comment I'll say in the redraft of this, if you notice, all the red stuff is bad, all the blue stuff is good. So that's the quick apolitical side of things of it. But I wanted to say this quickly. You know, from the original discussions back in the fall, which allowed government to take a step back, I give the government full credit for putting on the brakes, going back and basically redrafting a whole new bill. Because if we look at it today, this is a far different beast than what we had prior. And I can see those discussions echoed in those amendments. Is it perfect? Probably not. Is it a step forward? Absolutely it is. And I know there's a couple of amendments that are going to be coming forward, I believe, that also echo some of the further requests that the Bill 59 coalition has asked for as well. I do want to thank the Bill 59 coalition for their hard work on it, because I know that they're the ones that sat down with the departments, because I'm sure it started with the Department of Community Services and then moved over to the Department of Justice. And I know that was a tremendous piece of work that had to happen during that time. The part that I'm going to maybe criticize here is that we as opposition parties, and I know we get criticized for being political on these things, but quite honestly, we received a copy of this bill at 3 o'clock yesterday. So we only have a quick opportunity to look at this bill in its entirety, to understand the changes that are here before us, and then, of course, go back to our groups, our communities, to understand whether this is the best piece of legislation or not. Being that we are on the eve, apparently, of an election, that's why we're pushing it a little faster than what the process should be here in the House of Assembly. So it doesn't allow us as opposition parties, because we were not at the table. As much as we had, we were approached by the Bill 59 coalition as they brought us up to date on where this process was. Never once did we get an update from the government itself. So, you know, if I'm to ask that maybe when we come to these kinds of bills, as substantial as the changes are, that the opposition parties get drawn along with it, that they are, I'm not saying consulted, but at least brought up to date on where those changes are. And then we can all stand here together and say, we did this together. But quite honestly, what it really is that the coalition, the members of that group, the accessibility associations across Nova Scotia were able to get government to do this bill. And we, as much as we've tried is to stay out of that process, but it would have been nice to maybe be updated along the way so that we understood the things that are here within it. With that, I'm going to maybe ask. I'll put it as a general request to government, and I know maybe the government House leader can respond to it or not. But in the process that we have today, so we have allowed waiver for Committee of Whole House on bills to be considered today, which is a day earlier than what it should have been allowed because of the rules, because there's normally a day waiting on that as it's introduced in the House of Assembly. So that gives us opposition day tomorrow. That gives us a budget day on Thursday, where we don't necessarily consider a whole lot of bills because it's pretty much full with budget consideration. So that leaves us really with Friday. And I hope that the government House leader calls us back on Friday for third reading. That gives us enough chance to go back to our communities to at least ask what their thoughts are. And it gives us a chance maybe over the couple of days, if there's something else that's missed, things that should be considered in a further bill, that they're able to be included during third reading with possible amendments there, should they be required. So I throw that out, that we were more than happy to allow the waiver today, and I hope that the government allows this to be considered on Friday, so that we all have the opportunity to do our due diligence as opposition, as members of this House of Assembly, to consult with those members of our community that are impacted by bills like this one and many other, of course. With those comments, Mr. Chair, again, I appreciate the opportunity. I thank for all those who have participated in this process. It was a long one, and it really shows what can happen in Nova Scotia when we stop and listen.
The honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm glad to stand for a few moments to speak on Bill 57 here in Committee of the Whole. I do want to echo some of the similar comments of my colleague with the fact that there are a lot of people in the community and in the province that have worked extremely hard to get to this point today. I know law amendments was held yesterday, and by the rules of the House, this morning at first chance, when a daily routine allows for the committee to report progress, that there should be some time to allow members of the House to look at any amendments that had happened in law amendments for those members who aren't a member of that committee, and time for our caucus to look at those changes. So we did today agree to waive that 24-hour period so that we could get Bill 59 in committee of the whole. But I too would suggest that there are rules of the House that allow for ample discussion. And we should be very proud of the process here in Nova Scotia that allows community members, community groups, individuals to come forward when a piece of legislation is introduced to the floor on the floor of this legislature to have their say, to say it's a good piece of legislation or it's a bad piece of legislation, or there are amendments to improve the legislation that's before us. So I know a lot of work from the Community Alliance and other organizations has gone into getting us here today. I believe I was still receiving emails just before coming to the House encouraging me to support the government's request to move it quickly. But there really isn't no reason to move it as quickly as we see today, other than the fact, and it's not a secret, that the Liberal government will potentially call an election over in the next few days. So there's no reason why we could not have had the reporting of the bill today. It would have been on the order paper for tomorrow. But being opposition day, discussion Thursday, discussion Friday, passing the bill on Monday or Tuesday of next week. So I want to make it very clear to those Nova Scotians that we do support an act like the Accessibility Act, Bill 59, in hopes that it improves the lives of people who live with a disability. I stand today as the new critic for justice in our caucus, and I want to thank Mary Mancini, the former MLA for Dartmouth South, I can say her name today, for all her work over the past year or so on this piece of legislation. I think with her legal background, she was well equipped to guide us as a caucus through that, and I appreciate all the work that she did for that. So I look forward to the discussion here. There are, though, Mr. Chair, a number of amendments. I know the PC caucus has a couple of amendments to make. We also have pretty much the same amendments to make, and I think it shows that our two caucuses are willing to work together to try to make legislation the best it can be. And it's interesting to see today we're joined by many of those who have engaged in this process. I think for the very first time in the almost 14 years that I've been a member of this chamber, that we have a sign interpreter in the gallery, for example, Mr. Speaker, and I think that is an example of where we need to be. It shouldn't be the fact that we're just discussing a bill about accessibility to potentially have those types of services. So I'll take my seat. I look forward to some of the amendments that will happen and moved, and I hope that the government takes the time to understand that those amendments, we believe in the NDP caucus, would enhance the bill and make it even stronger so that we can really truly do what I think is right, and that's making sure that the Accessibility Act here in Nova Scotia is one that supports Nova Scotians from one end of the province to the other.
Shall Clause 1 carry? Carried. Shall Clause 2 carry? The Honourable Member for Pictou West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to introduce amendments to be made.
Order. I would just ask for the member to wait for the amendments to be distributed. Just 1 minute. The honourable member for Pictou West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I was going to indicate that while the change sheet was being passed around, that I would provide a few comments with reference to change sheet C.W.H. PC1 with regards to page 2, paragraph 2A. We would like to make the following amendments to add to the following after subparagraph 2. We would like to add 2A, assistive technologies and accessibility services, as well as 2B, housing options. And Mr. Chair, one of the reasons that we would like to add these amendments, it has been a very interesting process. It definitely is one where everyone collaborated and worked together, and I think we heard that. It was definitely echoed by all sides that were involved. I do believe that fundamentally, the human rights of Nova Scotians are being definitely met in this bill, and I believe that the whole process was definitely very respectful, and it was a very thoughtful process. Yesterday at Law Amendments, we did hear from Bill 59 Community Alliance, and one of the interesting statements that was made that really put a red flag up for me was that they indicated that the process would be given an A+. And I think everyone involved needs to be commended for that, because this group has worked so hard, and for them to recognize that the process could be given an A+ is something else for us to be proud of. However, they did indicate that the bill itself would be about a B+. And therefore, we've taken so much time to get it to this point. I don't know why it wouldn't be more beneficial to strengthen the bill by adding these two amendments. So on that, I hereby move the following amendments listed on change CWHB PC1 be accepted. Thank you.
The honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we had a similar amendment to be made, but of course, respecting the process here, we're more than happy to speak on the Progressive Conservatives amendment. One of the areas where they wanted to add, of course, was under the assistive technology and accessibility services. And we know, Mr. Speaker, a number of presenters from the accessibility community spoke how assistive technologies could help reduce barriers faced by people or persons with disabilities. For example, Mr. Speaker, one presenter gave the example of Braille options at ATM machines. I think we can all easily understand how such an option could help the visually impaired navigate this process. I think a lot of people could take for granted how something as easy as taking money out of an ATM could be difficult and a difficult process for those facing barriers to accessibility. And while assistive technologies may not be the standard, for federally regulated buildings, which we understand is the case, we know this is not the case for provincial institutions. So here's an opportunity to include assistive technologies in this bill, and I do support that, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
And thank you very much to the members opposite who have brought this forward. And I know that this is these 2 points have been raised by members of the Alliance as being desirable. And again, I will go back to the fact that there was an awful lot of give and take and a lot of considering what are the implications of putting different items in the bill. Some things along the way were accepted and some were not, but there was always a really good explanation. And I should say as well that the members of the Alliance have acknowledged the excellent staff that have come to work with them. They have been meeting every week as an Alliance group, and then a smaller number of the Alliance, a group of 5, have met 4 times for great, very extensive meetings with our staff. And so there have been sticky points along the way, points that you know, either we may have changed the wording, they've worked out the wording, or it's been agreed that it's covered in another area, that we believe that the intent of what the Alliance wanted was already being done. So I may start with that on these 2 points. And I think, again, just to go back, with all this hard work, we were really careful to consider implications to both the implementation of the Act and how this would work going forward. So we're a little bit leery, I'm going to be honest, and everybody in the House knows me. You know that I'm pretty frank about what I feel. I'm leery about some changes that might have implications we haven't had a chance to really study, because the lists that are given, and I'm going to give the background on this list, the original Act that came in did not have the list under 2A 1 to 7, but that list of the 6 plus a prescribed activity did come from the Minister's Advisory Panel. They came up with those 6, and the 7th says, and really saying a prescribed activity or undertaking means other items that may come up in the future. That's what it really means. So we did go to the prescriptive by putting it into the Act, but those 6 items from 1 to 6 came directly from the Minister's Panel, advisory panel, which had gone around the province and talked to many people and had studied the acts in Ontario and in Manitoba, the only 2 Canadian precedents that we have. And in fact, I was told today that by adding education, which is number 6 on that list, we went 1 further than Ontario or Manitoba. So we certainly were ready to have a very broad range of items that we know are going to require standards and work, and that have been spelled out in the Act. Now, I'll talk first about the proposition of adding housing options. And I know how fundamental housing is and how important it is. And perhaps when I'm finished speaking, the Minister of Community Services will speak a little bit about what her department's doing, because what I got from our advisors in the legal and drafting and support for this bill, our staff came back and said that the reason housing wasn't there was that there is extensive work right now going on in the Department of Community Services under the roadmap for persons with disabilities, which came out in pre the last election. It was on the table in 2013. Certainly our party endorsed it, and I wouldn't be surprised if all parties did. I can't speak to all parties, but I believe everybody saw the good work and the need for that roadmap for persons with disabilities. And so that work is underway, and I would like some discussion or further information to come from the minister on that too. Again, I just note that we went beyond the definition that was used in other jurisdictions, and so it's not that we're just wanting to totally replicate what happens elsewhere, but we think we've got a really good list of 6 plus others that can come to my attention or whoever's the minister's attention. And I wanted to mention that the Accessibility Directorate that's written about in the Act and outlined there, and the Accessory Advisory Board, Accessibility Advisory Board, are both entities that are going to be able to pick up issues that come up or see that if they think anything is amiss, bring it to the minister's attention and see that it gets acted on. So they have responsibility outlined in the Act to stay abreast of things, to be an advocate, to bring issues forward for government to act on. So I feel there's room for them to pick up the issue of, for example, it might be the assistive technologies, and say this is an area government needs programs for, or needs more programs. And again, the minister can talk about programs we currently have, and I know we all agree that they may need improvement. There's no question. I mean, anybody who sat and listened at law amendments would say there are needs. But we do feel we have mechanisms to bring them forward. And so particularly with the housing, I feel that it doesn't serve to put that in this list. And again, we would prefer to stick to the list that has come out of these extensive meetings that we've had, and give ourselves time to look at whether or not it needs to be somewhere else in terms of activity. And again, I would turn to the Accessibility Directorate or the Advisory Board to help identify things. The fact of the matter is, with all of the lists that we have, we're going to have a lot of work to do and a lot of standards already to get started on in our work plan. And we're having a huge undertaking before us. And again, the Act will be reviewed in 4 years. We will have done some of these standards in the meantime. There's lots of time to address it, I think, when the Act is reviewed, if we feel it needs to be in there. But we haven't had time to have the discussion with other departments and to see what the implications are. And that's why I'm just a little hesitant. And I'm standing today to say that we really prefer to not act on changing the Act in this way. And I would like to hear, if we could, from Department of Community Services about the current work being done on housing in light of what is in the Act. If we could.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, and it's my pleasure to rise today and address Bill 59, the legislation for accessibility in Nova Scotia. It's been a long journey. I think 3.5 years, and it needed to be a long journey. This is an important piece of legislation. It's groundbreaking, and I've used the word historic before, and I'll continue to use the word historic of the direction of this piece of legislation that allows and really puts in play the ability for every Nova Scotian to be able to work, live and play in their community in this province. It's been a long process of consultation, of trying to get it right, of making sure that voices that know this work, that live these experiences every single day, were included in the drafting of this bill, in the amendments, the democratic process of law amendments where people come forward with suggestions and amendments to make the bill forward, worked. Absolutely worked in this case. It's been my pleasure to work beside the Minister of Justice on strengthening this bill. I can't say enough about the people who were on the initial Minister's Advisory Board for this, who looked at everything from employability to the built environment on accessibility. I can't say enough about the Speaker, who has dedicated most of his life to moving this accessibility legislation forward, to people like Jerry Post and Clarendon Robichaud and Marcy Schwery-Stanley, people who have been working on accessibility and moving it forward in this province for decades. And we are here. We are on the precipice of groundbreaking legislation, which quite frankly can make us a leader in this country. And make no mistake, it will come federally. And they are looking at Nova Scotia as becoming a beacon and a champion of accessibility behind Manitoba, behind Ontario, and working with our federal partners to make this a reality for people who live with disabilities every day in Nova Scotia. The other thing I want, and I'd be very remiss if I didn't talk about the excellent, excellent, excellent work of people like Lynn Brogan and Catherine Berliner and Joe Rutterham, and Anne McCrae, who really worked with community and took this as their passion, took their expertise, their knowledge of legislation elsewhere in the country and brought it here and worked with the advocates here. So you could see a marriage of community, government, people who live with disabilities every day coming together for the greater good. Because at the end of the day, everybody has a right to live a fully accessible life in Nova Scotia. It really is the culmination of the advocates and the people who work in government over the last number of years where we've gotten to this point. 3.5 years, I would say probably without a doubt that time period has been unprecedented, and getting a piece of legislation that affects every single Nova Scotian in some way, shape or form right. And I believe we are on the cusp of that. I am absolutely endorsing the fact that every 4 years we have a review of this important piece of legislation so that we have the mechanism and the opportunity to go back and say, we've missed this. This needs to be done differently, or can we add this to the legislation? That's a crucial piece to our democratic process, to be able to have those checks and balances within a piece of legislation that affects so many people's lives. So just on that little, I'll remove myself from that little tiny soapbox, but I'm really proud of the point that we're all at today, and I commend all three parties for working together. All 51 of us have an obligation to make sure that we do this right and that this happens. 3.5 years, we are on the precipice here today. So when I'm talking about housing, of course, the roadmap for persons with disabilities, transformation of that system came into play and was adopted under the previous NDP government, and certainly was adopted by this government when we came in. And I have said it a million times, and I'll say it here today. This is not a political issue. This is not a partisan issue. This is simply the right thing to do. That transformation roadmap was the right thing to do. This accessibility legislation is the right thing to do. So when it comes to housing for persons with disabilities who are moving out of larger residential facilities, and they are moving, perhaps not at a pace where advocates are happy with, but we're doing it safely, responsibly, and respectfully. So the choice is the mainstay. Everything that is built from this time on through the Department of Community Services and their service providers is fully accessible to meet the needs of those persons coming out of larger residential facilities. Everything that is built in terms of public housing or any of the affordable housing is so under an accessible lens now. There are programs that are available to every Nova Scotian to make accessible improvements in their home. We have always maintained those programs and in many cases enhanced them. So rest assured, people moving out of larger residential facilities have been and will continue to be moved into fully accessible long-term housing within their communities in Nova Scotia. In terms of assistive devices, over the last 3 years, we've actually enhanced and developed new programs around assistive devices to help people who want to enter the labor market or go back to school or just assist them with the everyday living with whatever disability they may have. Everything from assistive devices to hearing aids to wheelchairs to actual people. So we have an attendant program. If somebody has a job that requires a person to accompany them, we have the ability in Nova Scotia to do that. Does it need to be improved? Yes, it does. But that's part of the standard building that will come after this enabling legislation. So these are not new ideas. These are initiatives that have been worked on by all three of our political parties over the last decade. They will continue to be enhanced. They will continue to be developed. And because we have the mechanism to go back and review this legislation every 4 years, which I must say, not every piece of legislation that comes before this House has that advantage or that value added mechanism. We have it with this. And why do we have it with this? Because it's important that it's done right. It's important that we keep up with the pace of people in communities who are telling us we need this changed, we need this added, we need this taken out. So with those few words, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, I'll sit down and take my place.
The honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I omitted to add a couple more comments. I understand the amendment that was proposed dealt with kind of three areas, and I know the members opposite talked on that. I spoke mostly on assistive technology, a little bit on accessibility services, but also the housing options. And I know, Mr. Chair, that the law amendments process, for example, demonstrated how critical accessibility services are for members of the accessibility community so that they can fully engage with the world around them. And when they engage, Mr. Chair, their ability to contribute is infinite. The Law Amendments Committee provided accessibility services, and the outcome was fantastic. Members from the accessibility community were able to make their feelings known. This process helped dramatically, I might add, Mr. Chair, to improving the government's first attempt at that bill. And we know that that wasn't very successful. Now imagine if these services were more readily available. There's an opportunity for government to show its commitment to do this by including accessibility services in Section 2 of the bill, similar to the housing options, Mr. Chair. I think preventing and removing barriers that disable people with respect to housing options is a worthwhile goal that should be included in this bill. We know community services originally had this bill under their department, but it was moved to the Department of Justice, and we feel that the housing options should be included in this bill. We all know how important choice is when it comes to where we live, as it impacts our lives in so many ways on a daily basis. For people to be at a disadvantage when it comes to housing options because they're a member of the accessibility community, I think goes against the spirit of the bill. So I do again call on the government to include the housing option in Section 2 of this bill. I know from the comments from the Minister of Justice and Minister of Community Services that they're not in support of that, but I guess we'll wait for the official vote on the movement of those that amendment that was brought forward by my colleague.
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you very much. So I've expressed my concerns that I have on the two amendments we're discussing. I just wanted to say that officially, I don't believe there's been enough time to consult with DCS to understand the full implications of adding housing in at this time. I feel that there is though a reassurance to everybody that there's two things. One is that the role of the Accessibility Board and the way it's anticipated is that they will do more than just see to these listed standards and the work that's underway. They'll be able to take on other issues and make recommendations for other programs and support. So I believe this could very well fall under their work for the Directorate and the Advisability Board. It would be something that they could take on as they get underway. So we have other mechanisms to bring it forward. And I also really feel that the current wording allows for other standards to be added in at a later date when we've had time to have those long discussions. And as I said, this came up very late. To speak to the Minister for Sackville-Cobequid, I think is your name? Yes. The Minister, or not member, the former member for Sackville-Cobequid spoke about wanting to be informed, and really the meetings with the Bill 59 Alliance have gone on right till this Friday past. Phone calls and discussions happening over the weekend. We have given dedicated and really diligent time of some of our very best staff to work on this and to try and iron out the implications of change and whether we can accept them or not. And this just feels very last minute to us. And we haven't had the time to assess it properly. And we're not saying never. We're really saying it will be, it can be addressed by those two, by the Directorate or the Board, the Advisory Board, and there's still room to add it in on the review in 4 years. And it will not be lost. The idea of both of those are not lost on us. The housing one, I feel particularly, is premature right now because of not having had enough discussion time. On the accessibility one, Mr. Chair, there is room to try and draft it. I was told, again, I'm following advice from staff, but staff said a better place to put that, and I'm not sure that the member is listening, but the better place, if we wanted to do a reference on assistive technology, would be to put it under the Directorate as perhaps part of their efforts, rather than to list it as a standard in the list of standards. So that, again, because this is the last minute, I don't have drafting for that. But I could look at seeing where they're suggesting it go, because our staff had very little time to prepare a pros and cons of making any further changes. But I'd like to offer that as one more step forward. I think when you take a peek at this bill, and the member from, where are you from? I can't remember. I'm thinking of Mr. D'Entremont. I'm not allowed to say his name.
Order.
Picked up.
I'd ask the minister not to speak directly to members across the floor. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
I'm just trying to think of all the MLA riding names. What I really want to say is that the changes are so extensive. You can tell that we have had a meeting of minds. We've had goodwill on both parts. We've had hard work and excellent people on both sides to come together. I'm proud of the fact that we've been open to change. We have not been resistant to change, and you can see it. The evidence is before you. I'm only saying that this seems to be too sudden, not well enough thought out, and that if we're going to make a change on the assistive technologies, I'd like to put that under the Directorate rather than in Clause 2, and I need just a little bit of time for our staff to write where they would see that coming. So on the housing one, though, I'm not in favor of us adding that today. So could we vote on those as two separate ones? No, I don't want to talk more.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I deeply respect the Minister of Justice, but when she stands in her place and says this is a rushed process, it's the government that asked us to fast-track this today. Normally the budget is going to be presented on Thursday. We usually have 3.5 weeks to debate, 2.5 weeks to debate the budget. So realistically, this could give enough time to have the consultations that the minister asked for. I guess the next question would be, are they willing to ask the Premier to hold off the next election? I mean, that's really where we're at, Mr. Speaker. So we understand that the government doesn't want to move on these amendments, but to give the response that it's a rushed process, I mean, I'm more than willing to stay here over the next three and a half weeks to pass this, Mr. Chair. And all we're asking is to make sure that the bill that gets passed in the end is something that is something that will have a very positive effect on all Nova Scotians.
The honourable member for Argyle-Barrington.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I too want to support that, because we can't have it both ways. I mean, we're quite honestly, the government wants to have it both ways. On one side, they're wanting us to accept the rush job that is before us. Like I said, I know there's a lot of work that's been done here. And I know there's been a lot of things done. But quite honestly, within this process, we normally have a lot more time to consider any bill that comes before us, and to be able to go back to the department. I mean, okay, here's what would normally happen maybe in a case like this, that the government House Leader would stand and say, okay, listen, those amendments might make sense to us, but we'd like to go back to the department and consider them and be able to look at them, and we'll come back tomorrow and maybe have a further discussion on it. Then they'll shoot them down and we'll move on. But because of this, I would say, I mean, we're before this possible eve of an election, from what we're guessing, and we've got all this time. That's now sort of compacted into this 1 week. And on one side, we're saying we'd like to have these amendments considered, and then the minister said, well, we don't have time for that. So I'm just saying that you can't have it both ways. You know, we got this yesterday. And we're trying to be constructive and trying to make sure that this bill is as good as it can be. And I just think it's a double standard to say, you know, we don't have enough time to do it.
We will now vote on Amendment C.W.H.B.P.C. 1, page 2, paragraph 2A. All those in favour? Say aye. Contrary minded? Nay. Motion defeated. Shall clause 2 carry? Carried. Shall clause 3 to clause 59 carry? Shall clause 60 carry? The honourable member for Pictou West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Earlier on the change sheet that was passed around C.W.H.B.C. 1, you will notice that on page 15, subclause 60, number 1, line 1, we are requesting that an amendment be made to delete the word directly. And I would like to move that if I can read the clause. 60, Mr. Chair. Any individual or organization who is directly affected by a decision of the director made under. So we would like to remove the word directly. And it's basically just to generalize the issue. We actually thought that perhaps it might have even been a typo. So this amendment did come once again from recommendations from the Alliance, Bill 59 Community Alliance Group. And I would like to move that it be amended. Thank you.
The honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and our caucus supports that amendment because, Mr. Chair, only allowing those who are directly affected by the decision of the director places all the onus on the person whose rights are impacted by the decision of the director. By taking out the word directly, others, we believe, would be able to help move the appeal forward. So that's why we do support that change in the legislation, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you very much. And again, Mr. Chair, I had heard this proposed change yesterday as everybody got a chance to read all of the details, but I've sat with the lawyers in the Department of Justice, the drafters of the bill, and I understand it isn't a simple change. If we take that word out, it has great implications to the whole process of how this will actually be enacted and operate within the department. And what I was told was, in terms, again, I always look for what are the other mechanisms that are available. And when we had long and lengthy discussions, not rushed discussions, long and lengthy discussions, to come to a very, very detailed and extensive change sheet in front of us today. In those ones, we had a chance to look at all the implications. And where we looked at things that we were not prepared to change was usually because we felt they're covered off and we don't want duplication of our efforts in government. And that falls right into one of our key roles, really, and one of the key aims of our government has been to try and streamline, to try and not duplicate and create new systems and the requirement for new full-time employees to operate things if we can do it in a simpler manner or a more streamlined manner. Now, if there is a complaint about any individual service standard or standard for accessibility that we're talking about, individuals can lodge a complaint with the new director of compliance. That will be recorded and noted. But they can also, if they're not satisfied, take their complaint to the Human Rights Commission. And that is an avenue that remains open and available and is actually improving every day. I mentioned earlier the Human Rights Commission falls under the Department of Justice. They have, in the last year, had a new director in that area, a new person in charge. I think maybe it's called CEO of the Human Rights Commission. But they've been making tremendous strides in streamlining their processes, using more restorative processes, so not everything ends up going into a big hearing and a big legal process. They can resolve a lot of problems by sitting down and using restorative approach. And they've been doing that and moving things through more quickly, actually providing better service to Nova Scotians who, I know all of us will remember, there's been cases that have taken a long, long time to go through Human Rights Commission. That's not going to be the case as we go forward. It's much improved, and things are being more responsive to Nova Scotians and their complaints. And I believe that process will be very effective and very useful for anybody who has complaints about accessibility standards and the accessibility laws, because this is a human right, and we need to assert that anybody who's being prevented from their access to work or shopping or all of the public spaces that they need, they have to have an avenue to take their complaint and have it acted upon. So we believe that the Human Rights Commission is the avenue that's in place today and will serve the public in the future who have those complaints. So that is really why we don't want to do duplication, and we're not supporting this amendment today for that reason. Now again, as this Act is in place and we go to the 4-year reassessment, reviewing the Act and seeing how it's going, we'll have a lot of evidence about whether people are satisfied, whether that Human Rights Commission has served the necessary purpose, and whether the Directorate and its means of reporting on complaints is working. So I would like to suggest that we not support this from the government side, but that we support continuing the processes that are already in place and not duplicating them. So this was never intended to harm anybody. And I said in the beginning, I would be very open to change if I felt it was warranted. And the evidence is before you with the number of changes we're looking at. And we have certainly been willing to embrace changes and strengthening the words. I just don't feel that this one is warranted at this time, and that I think it may be a concern that some people have, but that I feel is not really that significant. I don't believe there is a concern. I believe there's an avenue for complaints and for individuals to take their concerns to the Human Rights Commission. Thank you.
The honourable member for Argyle-Barrington.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to have to read this off my iPhone, but I'm going to print it out as soon as I can get to a printer. But quite honestly, what removing the word directly says ensures that those whose rights are abused have the same access to the courts as those who abuse them. The present wording is imbalanced in favor of rights abusers. As presently worded, if the Director of Compliance rules that a building owner must remove barriers, the owner can appeal to the court. If the Director rules that the building need not remove barriers, those who are barred from using it would have no right to appeal. This is unbalanced and can be surgically corrected by removing that word directly. And I'll print that as soon as I can get to a printer.
Thank you. We would now vote on Amendment C.W.H.B. PC1, page 15, subclause 61. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. Nay. Motion defeated. Shall clause 60 carry? Carried. Shall clause 61 to 73 carry? Carried. Shall the preamble carry? Carried. Shall the title carry? Carried. Shall the bill carry? Carried. I recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I move that the committee do now rise and report progress to the House.
The motion is carried. The committee will now rise and report its business to the House.
Order, please. The chairman of the Committee of the Whole House on Bills will now report.
That the Committee of the Whole House on Bills has met and considered the following bill. Bill number 59, which was reported with certain amendments by the Law Amendments Committee to the Committee of the Whole House without further amendments, and the chairman has been instructed to recommend this bill to the favorable consideration of the House.
Ordered that this bill be read a third time on a future day. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. That concludes the government's business for today. The House will meet again tomorrow on Wednesday, April 26th, from the hours of 1 to 5:30 p.m. Following the daily routine, it will be the NDP's Opposition Day, so I would invite the NDP House Leader to give us the business for tomorrow.
The Honourable House Leader for the New Democratic Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow we'll be calling Bill number 21, the Health Authorities Act, and Bill number 16, the Fair Drug Pricing Act. So I now request that we rise to meet again tomorrow at between 1 and 5:30 p.m.
Motion is for adjournment for the House to rise to meet again tomorrow, Wednesday, April 26th, between the hours of 1 p.m. 5:30 p.m. Would all those in favor of the motion please say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. House now stands adjourned until tomorrow, April 26th at 1 p.m.